Howdy. Welcome back to Dion Talk. Welcome back to Financial Freedom for the Lazy Person. The question is, are you lazy enough to want to make work optional? This weekend, I had the opportunity to talk with Jason Hartman. He was at the One Rental at a Time event in Las Vegas at the Center for the Blind. And I had the opportunity to sit with him in a room for about 30 minutes. And my hope was to get a chance to ask him if my binder strategy would be something that would help his audience. And I got a little bit of explaining to do, go over what the binder is, where it is where my tenants ask me to raise the rent. I thought as an investor, Jason might be interested in that. Maybe it can help the people who watch his channel or are, consuming his content on podcasts. But at the event, some people came in and stood in the room with us, so I really didn't get a chance to talk to him. He did set up an interview with me for later next week. Now, during this conversation where Jason was now sitting to the side, and since people paid to be at the event, I did not take my time to talk with Jason. I made sure I was talking to the people that were there at the event to see if they could be helped by whatever I said. And several people came in, one after the other, constantly talking about cash flow. Cash flow, it was the ultimate metric to them, smartly more important than unit count. Yield came up a little bit, but cash flow was about everything. 1% rule came up. There was a couple of other things. And at one point, Jason was just sitting there petting his dog, Sophie, possibly Panda. They haven't decided on the name yet. And I don't know if I got frustrated or if I just thought I'd make a point. But I started asking people, every time a deal came up, when somebody comes in, hey, I'm looking at a deal, I might possibly buy it. Can you tell me if you think it would be a good deal or a bad deal? Everyone went right to the numbers. Here's the price, here's the interest rate, here's my down payment, this is the rents, this is what my yield would be. And so I started telling people, cash flow is it's not the last thing that I look at, but it's really close to the last. It's probably the 8th thing that I look at. If I'm looking at a rental, cash flow is almost the 8th thing that I consider. And I said this to 2 or 3 people in a row. And eventually there was a moment where it was just us. And Jason leaned over, conspiratorially like, and said, I'd really like to find out what comes before cash flow. And I'm sure most investors have these same criteria before cash flow that I do. This is not unique to me. This is not a Dionism where I do things backward, like my tenant raises the rent, not me. I don't want to own in a good school district. I want my leases to end in the winter. I want to buy in a expensive market, not a cheap market. Like I have all these things I kind of do backwards. But looking at cash flow almost last is not something I do backwards. It's something investors do. And the hardest part of teaching, right? The highest form of learning is teaching, but the hardest part of teaching is remembering what it's like to not know something. So I'm going to go over 7 things that I look at before cash flow, 2 of them because they impact my yield and my cash flow. But these are 7 things that I consider before I run the numbers on a rental. When everybody brings me a rental and they go, is this a good deal or a bad deal? I get an 8% return. I get a 15% return. I lose 3%. Yes, you can take the yield and compare it to your area average and say, okay, that might be a good deal. But I'm not looking at math, at least not in the beginning. I've heard people say 1% rule. None of mine have hit their 1% rule. They've come a little close. Some of them were probably around the 0.5% rule. 3 of them were break even, which means the 0% rule. A lot of people open up the spreadsheet, plug in numbers, and try to make a deal work. I absolutely do not. Cash flow doesn't come in last, but it's really close. I invest in properties that are easier to own over decades. That's the plan. Cash flow is going to change 5, 10, 15 years down the road. I don't care about that as much. I care about these 7 metrics that make those decades easy to handle. Well, easier to handle. Nothing's ever going to be easy in real estate, but we can make it as easy as possible. If you get these 7 things right, the cash flow will take care of itself. Now, don't buy an alligator. You don't want to buy something that loses value or loses money every month. But let me set the frame. It's not about finding the perfect deal. It's about stacking criteria that reduce risk and minimize work. That means less stress. Because long-term tenants, that's where the real money is made. So before I even look at numbers, I run every deal through these filters. If it doesn't check enough boxes, doesn't have to hit all of them, but if it doesn't hit enough of them, I'm out before I even get to the math. There are 20 or 30% cash on cash return deals that none of us would buy. But everyone's focused on the math first because it's subconscious to go through most of these 7 things. Now, your 7 things might be different than mine. So if you're into short-term rentals or storage or mid-term rentals or rent by the room, your criteria is going to look different, but your criteria is going to have things that come before cash flow. If you rent by the room, what's your bedroom to bathroom ratio? That's more important than cash flow. If you are buying a rental property, is it in a place where the cops can't go alone and you would have to wear a bulletproof vest and you would feel horrible sending a property manager or a handyman there and they got injured because the neighborhood is so bad? That's more important than cash flow. So what is your strategy? What is your desired outcome? For me, here's those criteria. Number 1, I want to invest in single family houses. Okay. So cash flow eliminated every single family house I looked at in Washington state where there is no R, but there is cash flow in small multifamily. So I want my properties, for a reason, as similar to a single family house as possible. So if I look at a 15 unit apartment complex and it has a better yield than a duplex, people would say the math says get the 15 unit apartment complex. But a single family house gets 30-year fixed rate debt. So as similar to a single family house for me, for lending means 4 units or less. Fixed rate debt that I can own or occupy if I want to. But single family houses don't cash flow. So what do I want? I want a duplex, triplex, or fourplex or house with an ADU that is as similar to a single family house. Now this means side by side units, garage is preferred, right? So the type of rental to me comes before the cash flow. Now, if you're an investor and you think, well, obviously you would do that, that's what I'm saying. This is why teaching is so hard. It is very hard to remember what it's like to not know something. And if you say, I buy the rental that has the best yield, they might buy something that doesn't have fixed rate debt or something that doesn't qualify for a 30-year mortgage and they get a 10-year interest only balloon payment, loan reevaluation, commercial loan on their rentals. So while it seems like this is just something everybody knows, I want to go through these criteria because if you're doing it subconsciously, you want to write these down so that you don't miss a step. So as similar to a single family house as possible, because behavior matters. The average tenancy in a single family house is 7 years, and the average tenancy in an apartment is 2 years. I want long-term tenants with low tenant turnover. So that comes from being as similar to a single family house as possible. Very, very simple for me. Turnover is expensive, repairs are expensive. So I want something that feels like a home. The problem is in my market, those single families don't work. So it is as similar to a single family house as possible. Number 2, I mentioned this a little bit earlier. I don't want to own in a war zone. The best cash on cash returns come in the places that you can't go to safely. And you need to know your market. You should know your market as well as I do. And that's why if I do decide to buy in another market outside of my state, I'm going to spend months learning those markets. If you invest in Pierce or Thurston County, Washington, where most of my rentals are, I know that McNeeley Avenue, 3 blocks either side, full length of the road, is a war zone. You don't own there. A free property is not one I would own there. I would sell it and then instantly redeploy my money somewhere else. 301 T Street in Tumwater, Washington. Draw a half-hour circle, not a half-hour, half-mile circle around that. Around 500 warrants served there a year and never by a solo officer. You need to know where to avoid in your market. So not a war zone. That comes before yield. Math actually makes war zones look better. So why would somebody ask me, is this a good deal or a bad deal based on math? If we don't know, does it meet your criteria? Does it have a bedroom to bathroom ratio if you're doing rent by the room? Does it have things around you that attract short-term tenants? If you want low tenant turnover and long tenants, Does it have the criteria that gives you that? So not a war zone, as close to a single family or as similar to a single family as is possible. The third thing, which is an instant deal killer that comes before math, because why waste your time running the math on a property or thinking if it's a good property if you would never buy it? There's three, I would never own a rental in an HOA. Now, this is not because HOAs suck. It's because they are a deal killer for rentals for me. First, you have HOA fees. That's not the deal breaker. They go up over time. You have no control. Your tenants pay those fees. So who cares about that? The frustration, not the deal breaker, but the frustration is that the HOA boards are full of people who have nothing better than time to mess with you and the other neighbors, right? The Karens and Kevins of the world that are looking at the color of your fence, where you park your car, that your trash cans were out an extra day, how long your grass is. And if you're not in the good old boys club, you're the outsider. So no HOAs. Then the two deal breakers with HOAs that make this a no for me, no matter what everybody thinks. If I can own the HOA or I can be on the board and I can adjust it. The first one is your CCNRs are going to say what percent of the units in that HOA are allowed to be rentals. And I have a friend who owned a rental in an HOA. He had a tenant for about 5 years. Now, tenant moves out. He goes to put a new tenant. HOA steps in and says, we are over the 20% rental capacity that our HOA allows. Meaning he can't fill it with a tenant. He now has to move in, sell it, or leave it vacant. So that's a deal breaker for me. And then the last thing about an HOA that makes it an actual deal breaker for me is the thing that bit lumberjack landlord in the butt. A random assessment. At any point in time, you can get a bill for a couple $100 up to $100,000 from your HOA because they decided to do something that you don't even want them to do. In the lumberjack landlord's case, it was something like a retaining wall on the water side, and every unit had to come up with something like $68,000 or $78,000. So he ended up selling it. But a random assessment makes a rental in an HOA too big of a risk for me. So no thanks. So why run the numbers on a property, except in the very beginning when we're practicing to learn how to run the numbers, but waste our time when we're looking at deals to think how important is the math if there's a deal killer in there like an HOA? That came before cash flow. That came before the 1% rule. That came before yield. This criteria I run before the math because it can impact the math. Number 4 is, are there washer dryer hookups? Because like a single family house, I want tenants to be able to do in-house their own laundry. Because if a tenant is using shared laundry or a laundromat, they're waiting for a rental to open, and that increases your tenant turnover too much for me to want to own it. So the reason it impacts cash flow isn't because it's a deal breaker, yes or no. It's because if there are washer dryer hookups, I move on, continuing to look at the deal. If there are not washer dryer hookups, I look at the layout and think, is there a place where a wet wall and space means I could add at least an all-in-one washer dryer if I had to, if not space for a washer and dryer? Then I calculate, based on the estimates that I've got in the past, how much would it cost to add a washer dryer hookup to this unit in this space if it's available? Calculate that into my cost to acquire. That changes the outcome on the yield and the cash flow that you're going to get on that property. So that comes before cash flow. We're at 4 things so far, and we haven't even got to running the math. But every time a rental, is this a good deal or a bad deal? It's an email with, here's the numbers. That's number 4. Then the 5th thing is, I'm the lazy investor. When I started investing, I was working full-time and raising 3 kids. I am not looking for BRRRR projects. I don't want to do rehabs. I'm at the 5th thing in now is I don't want a lot of work. I prefer to buy tenant occupied because this usually, not always, usually means the plumbing works, the water's hooked up, the power's on, right? The big things are already in place. Now, that doesn't mean I just look at that and go, okay, I'll buy it. Now I want tenants in place. I've bought vacant places too. I'm going to have a home inspection done. If I have to paint, maybe put in flooring, sand and paint countertop or cabinets, sure. But if I have to rehab a kitchen, rehab a bathroom, redo the plumbing, tear out that knob and tube wiring, if the work gets so big, I don't care what the yield is. The place that I'm selling here, I'm probably going to make about $300,000 on. Not worth it. Never doing it again. I'm not looking for work. I was looking to put my money to work. I want to buy places where I put coated locks, motion sensor lights, maybe paint and flooring, and then move on with a tenant in place where I make money. I don't make as much, but I'm not investing to have a job. I'm investing to put my money to work. So the first thing, I want as similar to single family house as possible. The second thing, in order here, I don't want to own in a war zone. The third thing, I will not buy in an HOA. The fourth thing, I want washer dryer hookups. The fifth thing, I don't want to have to do a lot of work. The sixth thing, this has eliminated deals for different strategies, but I'm buying small multifamily. So house with ADU. My house with ADU is actually a 2,500 square foot house in a duplex on one property. One of them is an ADU. I don't know which. I think I do, maybe. I think I worked it out eventually. But or a duplex or a triplex or a fourplex. This is what I'm looking for. The sixth thing that is important to me that comes before math is parking. Now, you might be in an area where on-street parking is normal, but here in Washington State, where there is no R, there is an expectation of having enough places to park. So I want at least 2 spots for every unit. So if it's a house, 2. House with ADU, 4. Duplex, 4. Triplex, 6. Fourplex, 8. Minimum. Like that's the starting point where I will start to look at a property. If I look at a fourplex and it has 5 parking spots and the yield is 50%, I'm not going to look at it. I don't want to deal with that kind of tenant turnover. It's not about the math. It's about the quality of life. Yes, show me a 50% deal. I might look at how I could add parking. But in my area, I'm looking for 7 to 10% yield on a decent deal. Parking comes before the math. I will not waste my time looking at a place where I'm going to have to do so much work that I have to add parking, which could be permits, zoning requirements, space allotment, like all of the things that can make that an issue, why there isn't already parking there now. 6 things, and I haven't even got to the math. The 7th thing, I like low tenant turnover. So this is not a hard, none of these are all requirements. I can work around each of these, right? But I want pet-friendly fenced yards. I've bought places and put fences in. I've got a place right now that doesn't have fences. So this is something I look at before the math. I want a place where tenants are going to stay long-term and people with pets don't tend to move. Even if the human moves with the pet, it is a pet relocation. You have fewer options to move to with pets. You can pay a pet deposit, a pet or a pet fee, pet rent. You can pay extra money and pay a higher rents because there's fewer places for you to move to with your pet. Keeping tenants long-term is how I'm able to travel and enjoy my early retirement with a rental portfolio. If somebody doesn't focus and master their asset class and they own rentals, it is a job. You didn't retire. You became a landlord who works. If you're like Brian Davila and you create work by investing and putting your money to work, sure, it looks like a job. But if you target properties that keep tenants long-term, keep your repairs and maintenance, I don't want to own places with an HVAC. I don't want to own places with air conditioning. I'll have tenants with window units and I'll have baseboard or a cadet heater that need minimal amount of attention and not me ever going to work on it or not me setting up maintenance schedules. I don't want to own in a good school district. I don't want to own in a war zone. I want my leases to end in the winter. Like I have mastered one asset class to put my money to work to where it takes me the least amount of time. The entire time I was in Thailand for 3 months, even the last week where I actually ended up spending money on repairs and maintenance, the total time I spent was barely over 2 hours in 3 months. Retirement like that happens by buying an asset class that doesn't take my time. So yours might take time. You might have a different strategy. You might do rent by the room and self-manage. You might do short-term rentals or the rehab or BRRRR method where you're adding units and it takes more of your time and energy. But these are all criteria that happen before the math. And after that, we have to do the math. We look at all the numbers, right? This is where I'm different than a lot of investors. I don't have a target yield. I don't want to go, I get 10%, I get 5%. Instead, I do a market study. This is right out of the one rental at a time playbook. I look at the market, I study it for a period of time, and I see about 80% of deals are going to lose money. That's just a rule. But of the ones that don't, what's the average yield? Now let me look for ones that beat that. That check off the boxes of looking like a house. Having a pet-friendly fenced yard, having washer-dryer hookups or the ability to add them, has good parking, isn't in a war zone, isn't in a good school district. I want to check off as many of these boxes that happen before I get to the math. That doesn't mean math isn't important. You need to run the math not till you get it right. You need to practice the math until you can't get it wrong. But when you're looking at a rental property, math is just one consideration. Just one. I hope that at least made you think. And if you want to hear the rest of this video, this is something that I do every Tuesday from 4 p.m. until the questions stop. The rest of this video will be dedicated to answering your questions and letting you know, let me know if I'm crazy, because I'm going to be going over this list with Jason Hartman in our interview next week, when I will check my light setting before I start. I hope everybody is having a day full of amazing. Remember, you can't drink all day unless you start early. Did everybody enjoy the One Rental at a Time event in Las Vegas? I had a great time. My voice is gone. That was a week of talking, because the Midnight Denny's meetups, the Wednesday and Thursday, the nights before, they were great. Josh has a talking hangover from the One Rental at a Time event. I hope that other people that were there do. I hope the people that weren't there were at least in the school, SKOOL, for One Rental at a Time, and watched the event online. And you all got to see that I am actually 3.5 feet tall. It's kind of cool to be around all the people that aren't. Life Unruled was early. Hope they came back. Howdy, everybody. Good to see you here. Beth, I see you hanging out in the comments. Howdy. I got a text message. Make sure I'm not missing anything. There we go. Great to see you back home. Thank you. Yes, it was a good 3 months. I enjoy traveling. Next year, I think it'll be Philippines or Vietnam. Haven't decided yet. Could be Thailand. We'll see. Howdy. Closing on my first duplex property next week and will be inheriting a tenant. Do you recommend I have a seller sign an assignment of lease? I've never done that. The lease is technically between the tenant and the property. You are held to that lease, so it's not like you can change it, but consent is golden. So you couldn't go in and make a change without the tenant's approval, but if the tenant agrees to anything, you can sign a new lease. It probably wouldn't stand up in court if the tenant changed their mind later and said, we had this pre-existing lease. But how long is remaining on the lease? Congratulations on closing on your property. I do not do the binder strategy right away. There's a couple things you want to do. First, how long is remaining on the lease? If 3 months is remaining, I might do the binder strategy, because you have to give a certain amount of notice anyway. But I want to wait a month or two to see if they're tenants you want to keep. Do they pay their rent on time? Do they call you for trivial things? Do you get noise complaints, right? You didn't get to vet them. You don't know their credit score. You don't know their work history. You don't know any of that. None of that matters to me once they're in there. Once they're in there is what do they actually perform like as a tenant. But after a couple of months of getting to know them, you'll know if you want to keep them or not. And if you do, that's when I would use the binder strategy. Be aware of local laws. The assignment of lease I've never done. I would get a copy of the lease, go through it yourself, see what their responsibilities are, what your responsibilities are. Prepare a landlord introduction letter. They're probably aware it's being sold. They probably saw the appraiser, maybe the home inspector, maybe they met you when you met there with your agent or something. But your landlord introduction letter, I would have ChatGPT or Grok or whoever you use prepare one, and let your AI know that you want the how you pay the rent to be one of the last things talked about. Make it not look like money is the most important thing. So this is who I am. This is how you contact me. This is the date of the closing. From this date forward, I'm the point of contact for any issues. Any questions or anything from the inspection report will be addressed. And then towards the end, and from this point forward, to pay your rent, this is how I prefer it be done. And that's where you put in your method of collecting rents. My agent told me never do this, and sometimes agents know more than us, but I've been doing this for a decade, and this has worked out for me really well. But as you close on the property, I've asked the tenants, if you own this place, like, tomorrow this was yours, what's the first thing you would fix? I've never had a tenant say, add a bedroom, pave the driveway. I've had them say, fix the ceiling fan, it squeaks, put in a screen door. I would like to have the door open in the summer. What else did they say? There's just, spend a couple $100, you have a happy tenant. You still can say no if they ask for something ridiculous, but congratulations. Mark, good to see you here. Jasik, I see everybody jumping in here. Kris around the world, Tony Carr, Wayne Wong. Good seeing you guys. Good seeing you in Vegas. Wealth with Rentals, howdy. Frank from Watsonville. I never did get that 10 or 15-minute conversation with Cynthia. She's scared or something to come and talk to me. I'm too mean. But just give me a call and I can answer whatever question that she had that I never got around to. Wayne, do you think the new income tax law in Washington will affect tenants' ability to keep up with rent and other expenses? Not currently, because it's millionaires and above only. What will happen, and Millennial Mike and I are going to make a standalone video on this because he and I are the millionaires that are going to be leaving the state because of this new tax. It is a millionaire tax, meaning you have to earn more than $1 million a year in order to be taxed. Well, there's a RCW, a revised code of Washington, that says it's illegal to have a gradation tax system. So that'll quickly change to everyone is taxed. But before that happens and math kicks in, they're going to say it's going to make this much money to have a millionaire tax. And well, everybody that makes over $1 million a year is the most mobile people on the planet, and they will just relocate. They will relocate enough time of the year to where this is not their taxable income state. They don't even have to move out of the state. So that millionaire tax will not generate almost any millionaire income tax for the state. So that million will quickly be lowered and lowered and lowered until it impacts everybody. And I don't think it'll impact their ability to pay rents. Except maybe luxury rentals, rents could come down. Before people are unable to afford rents when expenses go up, Wayne, it's usually the family stays in a 2-bedroom bunk beds instead of moving to a third place, or people move in extra roommates, or roommates stay together longer than they planned. So that happens before rents are not paid. Alex, I just passed on a 10% cash on cash fourplex because it had no parking and it was up down units, right? So it's not as similar to a single family house and the parking wasn't enough. I look at them all the time and don't even bother running the math on them because they don't hit what I did. Now, if you're learning how to run the cash on cash return, sure, it's your waste of time to run the numbers on a deal you're not going to buy, but at least you get the practice of running the numbers. Somebody watching this. But good job, Alex. Yeah, that would have turned into a headache. Up-down units get noise complaints and turnover. No parking gets turnover. You've got too many things stacking against you there. Anna Kay, hello. We missed you at the meeting. Jason, good to see you here. We should travel together sometime, Jason. I think it'd be great. I wonder if the world can handle Frank, Jason, Jim, Alex, and me on a trip together. And racist Dave. Because he races cars, motorcycles. Tube. Love the title. I just come back from the land of leering centers. Happy to be back in Florida with relatively sane people. Relatively. I might add Florida to the possible places, northern Florida, Jacksonville, to places to look at. I'm actually going to have some questions for Jason Hartman during our interview about that. Josh was too lazy to have Dion sign my book. It's really cool. I mean, I love signing the books. That's great. But there have been some investors who are so young that when I sign the book, they say, can you please read me what you wrote? I don't know how to read cursive. Which is normal for younger people to do that. But younger person who can't read cursive but is smart enough to be investing. That's cool. I can hear what you got in Vegas. I hope it clears up soon. I'm allergic to Vegas. Wayne, Vegas kills me. I don't know what it is. Millennial Mike, you just missed that golden opportunity next year. So, yeah. Let me know where you live, Josh. I'm going to be probably driving to Utah, Texas, Tennessee. I'll be traveling around. I could stop by and sign a book. Mikey, howdy. Mike, let's do some burrs together. No, but in cursive. Can you read that? Dion, can we get some info on the upcoming real estate booze cruise this summer? Yes, I actually just was on the phone today with Stephanie, who is taking all the information. In the link in the description to this video is the phone number to call for the cruise, which if he can get the time off, Millennial Mike and Tia are coming on the cruise with us. June 21st to June 28th, paid for it today. It is not an official, like we're not renting rooms and having a conference and having presenters. It is all of us who want to hang out and talk for a week on a cruise ship to Alaska. There's several places on the ship where we can get together. And there might be some excursions that we could do together. But it's just a week of getting away, but spending some time around people that you do not have to have an interpreter for. And I'm not charging anything. You call Stephanie, she works for NCL, Norwegian Cruise Lines. I'm not getting paid for this. I just said, I'm going on a cruise. Let's all do it together. Here's the dates. Here's the cruise. It's going to be on the Encore ship that leaves out of Seattle, goes to Alaska, returns to Seattle. So I hope to see you there. Andrew, howdy. In regards to a trust, I read that the stepped up cost basis and reset of depreciation at the new value does take effect as long as it's in a living revocable trust. Still researching. Yes, do the research. It's something that Ryan Allnighter Hyder points out every time I mention that trusts can screw over your heirs because it doesn't initiate the stepped up basis or the depreciation recapture for capital gains. But there is a way to form your trust to where it does, but you still have to have somebody run the trust. And if you have heirs that aren't interested in rentals, you're setting them up for failure because they will run the business long enough to fail, for the debt to stack up, for the foreclosures to happen, for the bankruptcies to happen. And they will lose the asset that you could have just given them a sale. They get a bunch of money and they spend it however they want. So for me, at least for the next 10 years, probably there is no interest from my kids. A trust would just screw them over. And it has nothing to do with depreciation recapture or reset on capital gains or anything like that. It's that they would try to run a business they don't know how. He's the lazy investor, not the Burr investor. Even if Mike did all the work, that's still too much work for me. Elena, howdy. Good to see you here. I'm going through getting your 5th place closing in a few weeks. Congratulations. Nice. I'm listing my place. I'm actually probably in the next week or two. I have my first eviction service in a decade. And I feel really bad about it, but the guy's happy. Had a tenant, super young, was doing great for like a year, gets into some legal trouble, goes to rehab, and had other people living there. That's where the eviction came from. Serve the eviction, they move out. So didn't go to court, just serve the eviction. Talking with the guy, he's going to, setting up a payment plan to pay for what he missed. But it's not always puppies and kittens. But as you're getting to your 5th place and you're closing on that, start getting your systems in place. Elena, have you retained an attorney in case you ever have to go through an eviction in the future? Have you had an attorney look at your lease to make sure that the wording is best in case they ever have to? Like, there's a lot of things that you could be doing now to take, like what I thought, I've got an eviction coming. That'll be the first one in 10 years. Great. I've got the reserves, got the paperwork ready. That was kindergarten simple. Could have turned into a few months, stretched out things, and could have cost thousands of dollars for the attorney. So the stress would be there if I wasn't prepared, didn't have one retained already, didn't have the reserves. But as long as you're doing that and you're continuing to scale, I don't think you should have a problem. And you should let me know how that closing goes. But you're closing on one. I'll be listing my first one. I'm going to put all my stuff in storage and go look at these 3 new markets. And while I'm doing that, I'll have my property here in Port Orchard, Washington, a duplex on the water listed. Was working with the agent, looked up some comps, talked with AI. AI thinks I should list it for about $150,000 more than I am. Not going to do that. So it's a duplex. I think I'm going to list for $715,000. Even though the comps and some other things say I should go a bit higher, that's what I'm going to list at. Beth, you've looked at it. You've seen it. You can tell me if that's crazy. Josh, got a lot of pictures at the event. Still processing them, but hope to post them in the coming days. Cool. Looking forward to it. Jason and Frank, was a great finally meet you both in person. Wish my properties didn't. Yeah, you got to know your local market. Wish my properties didn't need HVAC. I got to remember to read for the people who don't look at the screen. I've bought 3 places with HVAC. When one failed, I ripped it out and put in cadets. I've got 2 that work. And then if they did minor work, sure. But as soon as there's anything over $1,000, I'm ripping them all out and putting in cadet heaters. But I'm in Washington State where there is no R, but there is mild winters, right? So if you're in a place where you need HVAC or oil heat or whatever, you have to know your local market. So don't do what I do in a different market where it wouldn't make sense. Yeah, I hate HVAC. Elena, I was super scared on the commitment of moving, but I gave me confidence to just do it for freedom. I want, yeah, you want financial freedom. It's going to come from being uncomfortable. It sucks. I'm not sure what that one means, Josh. So Mikey does, though. I hear you. 423 had to replace several HVACs last year. Yep. It's frustrating. But if you're in the area where they're needed, it's just what you have to do. When I get over my cold, you don't want me to give you the plague? Can I come view my duplex in Sumner? How about you send me a listing with the information, like the address, and is this something you're buying or something you're listing as a rental? So maybe instead of coming to Sumner to look at it, because I'm probably going to be leaving the state here pretty quick to go look at those markets, Utah, Tennessee, and Texas, and maybe Florida as to where to move. But I can take a look. My email is in the chat. I don't charge for taking a look. I mean, I can't give you like actual advice, but I could say, hey, if this was mine, here's what I would look at or what I might do differently. Mr. Nice Guy, math and separate utilities or knowing you can separate the utilities is important, just like the washer dryer. They're either separate, so the washer dryer either exists or I could make it exist. The separate utilities either is or I could separate. That is a requirement for me. Now, different markets might have different things. Mike has one triplex where I think either all the power or all the water or something has to be in his name and he has to just live with it. Jason, you started early on a couple of those days. Would never guess. Could never tell. Elena, how many properties do I need to become free to not work? I'm simple. I have five properties and 4 rentals. So there is a video on my channel that I would like to, if I knew your email, I would just email you a link to it. But it's called the Real Estate Investing Education Timeline. Okay, so this is not an insult. This is to clarify. I get an idea of what you know based on your questions. So there are no stupid questions, or there are no stupid answers. There are just dumb questions from the teacher, right? The teacher can give you dumb things to say, but the question is never dumb because the question tells the teacher what to focus on. So how many rentals do I need tells me. So I go through like K through 12, since we all understand that system, right? Kindergarten through 12th grade. And this is the real estate investing education timeline. So how many rentals do I need it's not an insult. It's how I look at this. It's the kindergarten question because it means we're comparing unit count. So if you look at this person and he has 50 units and this person has 5, 50 sounds like it's better. What if each unit is losing $1,000 a month? 50 is not better than 5, right? So how many do I need to retire? Are you making money or losing money? So if you're losing money, units doesn't help. So that's the kindergarten question, is how many units do you have? Because in the beginning, we're like, if this person has 130 units and this person has 2, I'm probably going to ask the 130. They might have more experience and a bigger portfolio. And that's probably like 99.999% accurate, right? 130 versus 2, 130 is going to have more experience. So the next question is, elementary school, how much do you make per unit? This sounds smarter, right? So if you have 5 properties, 4 units, and you're making $100 a unit, you're making $400 a month. But if you're making $1,000 a unit, that's $4,000 a month. So how much are you making per unit? Now, if we know that they're both positive, the 50 looks better than the 5. But we don't understand if those are good investments. Because what if, Elena, you took $1 million and you put it in a property and you're making $100 a month? You're making $1,000 a year. That is not a good return on your money. But if you invest $100,000 and you're making $1,000 a month, that could be a good deal. So in high school, so kindergarten, we go, how many do you have? Middle school, we go, how much do you make per unit? High school, we go, what's your yield? annual profit divided by cost to acquire, right? This is the math. That's where we go, okay, I get a 10% yield, a 20% yield. So what is your cash flow? So cash flow can tell you how many you need. I don't know what your cash flow is with you have 5 properties, 4 units to tell you when you can retire. But if you know what your yield is, then you can actually go, okay, if I need $40,000 a year in cash flow, I need to be getting a 10% return on $1 million or whatever that is, right? That's whatever that's a 4% return. But so you're using the 4% rule. So if you need 100,000, this is where the 10% came from. If you need $100,000 a year to live on, you need to have $1 million invested with a 10% return. So 10% of $1 million is 100,000. So how much do you need every year? That's how much you need to invest. Now that's the first year. It goes up after that. So that gets you to high school as you figure out what yield is. But when you graduate high school, you go back to the very beginning of this video. How many properties do you need to retire? What if you had one property that took you 20 hours a week to manage? You wouldn't retire. You'd be buying another job. Your rentals would be your job. So are you buying properties that keep tenants long-term, that have those criteria that I talked about? Is it like a single family house? Does it have a fenced yard? Does it have washer dryer hookups? Does it have enough parking? Is it in a safe neighborhood? Right? All of that happens and yield. So this becomes a comprehensive. I want to get a good yield. I want to invest the right amount of money, and I want properties that aren't going to create another job. So math-wise, how much do you need? That is, and you kind of have that data. Look at the last 6 months. What are you usually spending? Some things are going to go down. You no longer need to save for retirement. You don't have to commute. You're going to pay less taxes because rentals are taxed different than your W-2. Healthcare is going to go up because you're paying the whole premium. Your employer was not providing healthcare. They were providing healthcare insurance. So now you have to provide the healthcare insurance. So you can look at all of that to go, okay, and to retire, I need, this is what my bills are. I want this much money coming in as a buffer. In case you go through an eviction or tenants aren't paying or you have big expenses 1 year or whatever, what buffer do you need? But then I would like to take it one step further. And this is why Millennial Mike has not retired yet. And we talked about this in a video in Vegas, which hasn't come out yet on his channel. But when you retire, would you like to continue to invest? Right? You spent the years it takes, the discipline it took to acquire the rentals that you have to make work optional and walk away from your job. Some people go, I need enough to cover the bills and I want my buffer, and then they're done. But then they're a little frustrated because they can't keep investing. So for me, I live on around 4. I'm trying to increase that to 5,000 a month, right? I have over 20,000 a month coming in. So I've got my buffer. I can handle black swan events, but then I also have somewhere between $10,000 to $17,000 a month adding to the account every month, so that eventually I'm going to have to buy the next property. So I'll continue to invest. So I've got my bills covered, the buffer covered, and my continue to invest amount there. So there's a whole bunch to that answer, and it is not how many units. That's a point to start, because you could use that. I get this yield, and it's this many units to get where I'm at. You could do math to figure out how many you would need, but it's never just unit count. Mr. Nice Guy, never make it to lives anymore. Babies need attention. I want to do a video with Mike too. I forget who mentioned it. They were called Rush babies from Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh used to have a radio show, and kids would sit in the back seat. And when the parent was commuting to work, those kids would hear Rush all the way to work, all the way home. So those kids grew up with fairly conservative views because they listened to Rush all the time. So there are some poor kids stuck in the backseat of a car right now on somebody's way home or way back from school that are Dion kids or Millennial Mike kids because they listen to us in the background. That could be your kids. Native to Earth, once I'm close to financial independence, I'll go to an ORAT event. The ORAT event could be what gets you to financial freedom sooner. Who depends on who you connect with there. Curtis, who did an interview with me on the street, Dion, my mentor is moving away. Do I go for the house hack record or go out of state too? You are working still in the state where you have the benefit of working in your field in this state. So if you found a teaching job somewhere else that paid more, maybe was more consistent, maybe move. But if your mentor's moving away, understand that we have the interwebs. We have annual events. That mentor probably still has at least half of their portfolio intending to stay in this state. So they'll be here in the winters or spring or fall. They're probably not going to be here. They'll be here in the summers. They're not going to be here in the winters. So you'll still be able to connect with them. I would go for the house hack record. Jeff and Suleika are moving from number 9 into number 10, breaking Lumberjack Landlord's record. So let's get you there. You're moving into 3 soon. I think you should stay here. But watch for that income tax to hit state level. That could change that answer. Mr. Moore. Sure are crazy. I mean, part of the 1%. The rest of us sheeple are trying to escape the rat race, brother. Question. What is more important to you, cash flow or appreciation? There's no question. I don't invest for cash flow. Cash flow is a metric, but appreciation means even less to me than that. Like I said, cash flow isn't last, but it's close. All these metrics at the beginning of this question come first. I've never touched equity. No cash out refinance, no HELOC, no sell for 1031. I don't look at dead equity like somebody go, I got the cash flow on the amount that I invested. This is my yield on what I have invested. Cash flow set me free. My property's value could drop to 0 and I wouldn't care as long as the yield was there on the rents. Like I care about rents, not appreciation. So that's not my metric to use. It matters a lot more in commercial because their net operating income can dictate the value of the properties more, and value of the properties can give you more equity to deploy. So Cody, Christian, the people that do that have a bigger use for it. Millennial Mike, Zuber, and Matt will have massively bigger portfolios than me because they've used capital redeployment, right? So they've recycled capital. I've never done it. I recycle cash flow. But I wasn't looking for a big portfolio. I want the right amount of cash flow from the least amount of units. And that came from investing in a high cost of living area where the rents are strong, where I chase a certain yield, and I target all of the other metrics that come before cash flow. But appreciation is an accidental byproduct of buying well. Real wealth came from this. I want to make a standalone video on this, but it seems like a humble brag. So I don't know if I'll do it. But I'll say it here in the middle of this long one. I had $1 million year. I had a year where I made $1 million. Now, it wouldn't put me in the $1 million tax bracket the way Washington's looking at it, but most of my life I made less than $50,000. In 2019 or 18, I made my first year, I made $61,000. Yeah, it was massive. I was on track to make $115,000 at Oak Harbor Freight Lines when they went on strike. And so that year didn't even finish out. But so I would have had a better year that one year. But most years less than 50, right? After leaving law enforcement, where I made, I think 48,000 was my best year there because I was at 21.80 an hour or something, tiny little town. But I get to the trucking school. I started at $17 an hour and I worked my way up till 61,000 happened. But that year, around 2020, the owners of the company saw how much I was making off my rentals. This is the year I got the fourplex, emptied the retirement account, and bought the triplex, doubled the size of my portfolio, way over doubled the size of my cash flow. So the income from work went up a lot. I think 2020, I almost broke 200,000. 2021, I broke 200,000. First time in my life breaking $200,000. But it was either 21 or 22. I had $1 million year because I had the income from W-2, which was around 200,000. My rental income was around 200,000. So that's $400,000 in income. Sounds like a lot, right? No, I broke $1 million that year because the appreciation on all of my properties was over 600,000. So is appreciation important? No. Do I care about it? No. But it is a weird metric when we have a year where there's a lot of appreciation and you sit back and go, my net worth increased by $1 million this year because I had this 200,000 income, this 200,000 income. I'm living on less than 40 and a $600,000 in appreciation. Appreciation is amazing, but I wouldn't invest for it. Chris, sorry we missed it. We're at wife broke her foot, so you had to punt. Life gets in the way sometimes. That sucks. Elena, this house is bigger than 3,500, so I want to make tenant reliable. Is the score main thing? So for screening tenants, credit score matters. How you do anything is how you do everything. No eviction history is more important than credit score. Like, so if somebody has an eviction ever, I won't let them in. But if somebody has a really low credit score, they can have a cosigner. A person with an eviction can't have a cosigner for me. So eviction comes first, then credit score. But then these are all the intangibles. How did they communicate with you? Were they clear to communicate with? Do they have the capability to reason? Like, can they process your comments and reply to you? I like to do open house rental viewings, right? So I'll set up everybody who applies or is expresses interest. I say, I will be at the place to show it Thursday from 5 to 7 or Saturday from 1 to 3. So like, I'll give a couple of options and 2-hour windows, but I want more people to show up because I own small multifamily properties, which means whoever I place in a property is going to have to live next to my existing tenants. And if you place somebody that is not a good person, you could have problems with your already existing tenants, not just the new tenant. So if you have open house, everybody can put their best foot forward if they're coming to meet you, right? Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, because you decide if they get to live there or not. But how do they interact with people who don't determine their future? Are they rude, dismissive, condescending, or super polite to somebody else that's there that also look at the rental? So I'm not doing open house to increase demand and make people want to be more interested in it because there's scarcity mindset. I'm seeing how they interact with other people because they're going to interact with my other tenants. So there's no articulable fact that you can use for saying this is why I would rent to or not rent to these people. And a huge property management company can't do this because you can't train your office staff to judge personality, but you can. When you're showing a rental, you have gut feelings, and you don't put it in an email, don't put it in a text message. I can't let you live here. You were too rude is not a good reason. But I'm sorry, a more qualified candidate applied before you is an answer that ends the conversation. So that's the way I look at it. No evictions, credit score. How did they interact with me and the other applicants? Matt would be a little more detailed like he was at the event. He wants to see the last 3 rent payments and look at their lease. Like if their lease said your rent is due on the 1st, late after the 5th, and you see the last, and this is the example he used, the last 3 rent payments were made on like the 7th, the 9th, and the 13th. That's not reliable. So looking at their rent payments and the dates, that could help too. That was a really smart thing that Matt said. I don't know that I've ever done that, but I'm definitely going to do that going forward. So still learning, especially from Matt. Mr. Nice Guy, do you enforce renters insurance? I spoke with landlords where the tenant stated a fire via cigarette. Renters policy covered all damage. I may start enforcing this. So I've not enforced it. I have insurance on my properties. My leases say that tenants are supposed to have renters insurance because the renters insurance will cover their stuff. So if they have a claim, they can't come after me because my leases require they have renters insurance. But I've not had a claim, and I've not had an issue where my insurance wouldn't cover it. So it could be something you enforce. I'm more worried about the tenant coming after me for something that should be on their insurance that they would have to do because their policy is required in my lease. I've never checked and don't care. But if we have a claim, I'll just point at the lease and say, you have to have insurance for this. Curtis, fly like an eagle, your next mentor for many. There you go. And where would you move, Curtis? Curious. Alex, I can relate. House hack, you have way more boots on the ground locally. There are. And Alex has an intended date of departure as well. It's less than 4.5 years now. But nobody's counting, right, Alex? Stephen, where is the best place to go through explanation of the 1031 process? I am selling about $350,000 of land. I own free and clear, planning to purchase 5 to 6 small multifamily properties. So you could do some online research, but there is that, I forget what they're called. It's 1031 exchange company because you can't run the 1031. A company has to. I'd probably contact 2 of them, if not 3, and say, run me through the process of hiring you to do a 1031 with me. What do I do? What's the timeline? Right? Because I can spout off a lot of the 1031 stuff, but you're not taking notes and you probably won't remember. But you can get on the phone with one of those companies that you're going to have to hire anyway, figure out what their pricing is, see how they communicate with you, because your state might be very specific to how that works, the market that you're shopping in. But you can do what you're talking about. One of the criteria is what you're investing in has to cost more than what you're selling, right? But that doesn't mean the one thing does. Aggregate all of the ones together that you do have to cost more than the one you're selling. So that's what I would do. I would contact 3 of those service providers for 1031 exchange. It's like an uninterested mediary or something, but there's a technical term for it that somebody will put in the comments because my memory sucks. But I would talk to them. Mr. Nice Guy is bailing on us. See you in Futureland. Do you think the $1 million tax will actually pass? It did pass. Passed today, from what I heard. So it's how long will it take the millionaire tax to be that you made anything tax? Chris, with that, I've been praying for a mentor, and here you are. Here you are. And my email's in the chat, so reach out with any questions. If people really want to get deep, you can go to diontalk.com. There's the free binder course there where you get your tenants to ask for a rent increase. All of the different ways it works is there. You can book an hour with me, but I don't recommend doing that right now because anybody who takes the course gets a free hour and a free hour call like a month later. And then every other month, we do weekly Zoom calls where we all jump on Zoom together. So the members only is going through StreamYard. That's a little different, but the Zoom calls are going for the course. So we jump into the course. We do portfolio deep dives. We look at specific deals. I actually do more training there on how I run my business, which is a lot different than real estate. Sometimes we'll get into NLP, negotiations, different tactics for being better at running your properties. But that's every other month. So January we did calls. February there's no calls. March there'll be a call every week. April no calls. May a call every week. As long as I could see that going forward, that's going to continue. Don't book an hour, buy the course because you get an hour and then a follow-up hour for free if you book the course. Kenny, can someone remind me why Beyond doesn't want to own in a good school district? Thanks. Dion, probably doing voice to chat. And if you have your nose like mine right now, I wonder what Siri would think I was saying. A lot of owners want to own in a good school district for whatever justifiable reason that they have. But why is this school district good? Higher taxes. They have more money to spend on the school district. My problem is tenant turnover. So my solution is properties that keep tenants long-term. Pet-friendly fenced yards, washer-dryer hookups, lots of parking, safe neighborhood. It's as similar to a single-family house as possible. Side by side, not over under all that. But when your kid leaves middle school, is that high school the one you want them to go to? If you're a renter that's focused on school district, maybe it's a different high school that's the one that you want to. Their music program's better. If your kids graduate high school, they go off to college. Do you really want to stay in that place? You were there for the school district. So you have planned obsolescence when you have tenants that are pursuing a good school district. And I want tenants that were in a property 26 years and then I buy it and then they die 10 years later in the property. Those are the tenants I'm looking for. And that doesn't happen in good school districts. So that is why I do that. Millennial Mike, when he first started investing, he targeted good school districts and he's never screened a tenant for kids. So, and also there's your legal form of discrimination. I don't want kids in my rentals. I've had a couple $100s in pet damage in over a decade. I've had tens of thousands of dollars in damage from kids. So will I rent to people with kids? Yes, I don't illegally discriminate, but I do some things to legally discriminate. I don't want the good school district. If there's ever a major repair to a bathtub, I rip it out and put in a walk-in shower. Things that make it less likely for families to want my rentals. Yeah, my $1 million year was not revenue. It was profit. It was appreciation, cash flow. I mean, the cash flow was way more than 200,000. Not the cash flow. The rents were way more than 200. Jason, that sounds great to travel together. I think it would be great. I think it would be awesome. This is where everybody understands why Dion has never been arrested inside the United States. 0 to hero. I am under contract on rental 6 in Scary Gary. 75,000, 2-bed, just under 6% rate. Nice. So if you're not investing locally, have you gone and looked at the street or had somebody showing you a video of the street to show what's next to you? Because that's what I've learned about Gary is if you're on a street, you might look up one side and it looks like Norman Rockwell. It looks a painting of pristine nice. And you look at the other side and it looks like Norman Bates. Somebody's going to kill you. So what's around that property? That's what would determine me to invest in Gary is what street is it on? It is literally street by street. Be like Mike. Travel there. Look at it street by street. Know what you're getting into. But congratulations. Scary Gary. Alex, I got my King of Gary hoodie on. Got to represent. School districts have high tax and attract families until kids grow up and move away. Thank you. Mr. Moore. How do you decide between conventional loans, FHA, DSCR, and other financing options? What are the best companies to use or best banks? So on YouTube, there's somebody texted me. Make sure I'm not missing it again. And it's not a handyman. Oh, no, just somebody sending me the Quality Leering Center pictures of Kamala and AOC, and it looks like Crockett. Nice. Some people never leer. Emperor ran off with the squirrel's groove. Let me see. So for me, it's 10 conventional loans in my name until I look at anything else. Long list of reasons why I don't want to ever use an FHA, because FHA loans are not designed for first-time buyers. They're designed for buyers that have bad credit and a bad debt-to-income ratio. So if you don't have bad credit and a bad debt-to-income ratio, please don't do FHA. People say, but it's only 3.5% down. Well, your first conventional loan is only 3. 3 is less than 3.5. Conventional loans don't care if you're moving from a fourplex to a duplex, or a duplex to a house, or a house to a triplex. FHA loans do. VA loans do. I have not used my VA loan yet. I might go into details of why I haven't, but that's just my issues with the VA, and it makes me too emotional. So I'm not going to start with that. But DSCR loans, every now and then, the interest rates can be better than conventional. Sometimes they're not, but they usually do require 25 or 30% down. So sometimes the higher down payment is why I haven't looked into them, but not always. Sometimes they're lower too. FHA makes sense if you have bad credit, bad debt to income ratio. A DSCR loan still looks at your credit score, but doesn't look at your work history, doesn't look at your work consistency. It doesn't really look at you, your income. It looks at the property. So there's a time when that can make sense too. So how do you choose which loan product works for you? Is what's your situation, right? People think FHA because it sounds like an F and an H, first-time home buyer, and that's not it. It's in 1934, they created the FHA loan product in the Federal Housing Authority because there were over 2 million people laid off in the construction industry. And they thought if we came up with a government program that helps people that shouldn't be able to buy a house, they'll build more and they'll put the construction workers back to work. So the purpose of the FHA loans is to shorten the length of recessions. It's not to help people become homeowners. But people think it's associated with first-time homebuyers because you can have bad credit and a bad debt-to-income ratio. So for me, all my loans are conventional. If I got to the point where I had 10 in my name, I might go seller financing, DSCR, asset-based lending, or one of those. You can do, if you get to the limit of 10, there is no limit if you're house hacking. You can do an 11th loan or a 12th loan or a 13th loan as long as you intend to move into the property. So house hacking eliminates another barrier for you. I reached financial freedom with only 6 mortgages in my name. We'll see how that goes in the next few years because I'm going to sell 1 or 2 and buy 2 or 3 or 4 more. Who knows? But if I get to the 10 in my own name, I'll look at DSCR lending. Another drawback to DSCR lending is you can't occupy the property. It can't be owner occupied. So there goes house hacking. So there's a whole bunch to learn about lending, and the best thing to do, it's step 3 in the 6 steps to reach financial freedom. Right? The first one is increase saving. And saving starts by making more money. It's that over time, climb the corporate ladder, change companies, develop a side hustle, and then spend less. Step 2 is work on your credit score. I mean, no matter what you're going to invest in, credit score can't hurt. Step 3 is talk to a lender to find out what your options are. What is the best loan product for you? And talking to lenders doesn't mean one. You want to talk to credit union, mortgage company, a broker, large bank. I have in my book, Financial Freedom for the Lazy Person, available on Amazon, Kindle, and Audible, has a section on how to get the best interest rates. And there's an order of operations to lending. I start with the big bank, right? Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase, one of those. They've got the strictest lending criteria, and basically whatever they will qualify you for, everyone else will do that or better. So I start there. Once I'm under contract for a property, then I shop lenders. I say, this is the property I'm looking at. Here's what the bank has offered me, their interest rate, their cost to buy it down. This is what their loan product is. And I say, can you beat it? And if somebody can beat it by more than 0.5%, or the cost to buy it down is more than 20 or 30% less, then I'll take it back to the bank and I'll say, hey, look, this is what they're offering. If you want to keep my business, you got to match it. The bank doesn't have to beat it. They have to match it. First 3 loans stayed with Wells Fargo. After that, everything went through Fairway Mortgage because they were able to beat it and the bank couldn't match it. So I do that. Sounds like a ton of work because it took me 5 minutes to explain it. But it's like 4 emails that you copy and paste to save tens of thousands of dollars over the next 30 years. So long answer to a video that could be all by itself done, but I hope that information helps you. Howdy. Welcome back. Thank you for that. The Grumpy Contractor. Howdy. We were talking about all of us going traveling together. some of us might get into scuba diving, so we could go. The Riley Oak. Do you monitor your tenants for paying their utilities? Washington State. I'm worried because I could somehow be liable if they don't pay and water gets shut off or something. I have not ran into the issue. Do I monitor? No, but I have what are called landlord policies. I'm in Washington State too. So if my tenants ever shut off and stop paying, then everything automatically, to steal Matt's term, goes into my name, and I would be notified. So I think if it's not paid, I think so. I don't know if I would give that as an answer, and I don't know if they could tell you if they're paying it currently, but it goes in tenants' names, and then I have landlord policy to where it automatically goes back into my name if they move out or turn it off, so that my handyman have power when they go there, or when I go there, there's power to work on stuff. Elena, it's first time I don't have lots of money, just bare minimum, 5%, 20,000. It's scary, but now you also have some experience in the other rentals with cash flow. So year 7 of investing, I purchased a fourplex and got down to $200 to my name. But I had a good job. I had a paid off property. I had cash flow, and I was buying a property where we would close on the 6th. And I would get that month's rent, and I would get it was a fourplex, and I would get the next month's rent. And then the next month, the first payment would be due. In the first 7 years, I would never go below my reserves. I only did it because of the perfect timing. And I used my retirement account as a reserve at that point in time. And then later that year, emptied that retirement account out. Everyone in the colder areas can take your snow back. It sucks. What is your weather's down here playing in our backyard? Can you come and get it? Our Escape the Rat Race journey. Were you successful interviewing for Zuber's podcast? Were you successful interviewing for Zuber's podcast? I was able to get an interview with Brian Davila while I was at the One Rental at a Time event. And I got a bunch of interviews done with other people. I don't know that interview will see the light of day on YouTube. Zuber usually posts without looking. He just goes, hey, here's the content. Let's put it up. In transparency, if you watch the interview between Brian Davila and me, Brian is a really good entrepreneur. He is good at sales. He is good at wholesaling and flipping, and he built a team, and he makes a ton of money. So as an entrepreneur, he's 10 times, 15 times more successful than I ever want to be, right? So it was fun to interview him, because if an entrepreneur watches that video, he wins almost every argument. Because the solution is often, well, if you're struggling and you don't have a job, you just go make $30,000 next month and you get back on your feet, right? That's the entrepreneur mindset. He knows he can go wholesale and flip, and he's got the systems in place and years of experience, and you just do that. Well, that's exciting. If you're an entrepreneur, of course, that's what you want to do. If you are a W-2 employee and you understand that you can't just go make $30,000 next year because you feel like, or next month because you feel like it, but you can consistently get a paycheck, be bankable, save up money, put a down payment, and in 10 years have some cash flow, which is the thing he would never agree to. He was like, if it doesn't make cash flow year 1, it's dead, it's a lie. And I'm like, no, I bought 3 break-even deals. I'm telling you that's how cash flow works. It takes years to stabilize, improve, process improvement, tenant turnover, value add, refinance to better rates, increase rents, all of these things within a decade to create financial freedom, which he doesn't care about. He's saying you can't buy a rental unless it makes money day 1. Well, sure, that's what a flip does or a wholesale does. But the work I did in 2013, 15, 18, 20, 21, 23 is what is paying for my life now, and I don't have to do the flip or the wholesale. So, entrepreneur that watches it, Brian wins, hand down. Investor that has a job and a family, that isn't an entrepreneur and isn't a salesman, that isn't got their going stuff, I believe I won. Until the religious stuff came up at the end, and then I lost everybody. I will lose people on the left and people on the right. The religious argument got so bad that when it was done and we went back to the little space for my other interviews, Millennial Mike came in there to continue the argument because he was offended by what my statements were. Which is why it shouldn't make the internet, because I was not trying to insult religious people. He tried to attack me with religion, and I defended myself. And as a Marine, there is no acceptable defense except obliteration. So, should it see the light of day on my channel? Sure, who cares? If I lose subscribers, who cares? If it goes on Zuber's channel, what's the point of me trying to help Zuber do an event if I cost him subscribers? So, but I was successful to do the podcast, the interview. Sometimes life is about having fun, even if it irritates your closest friends. Hi, Dion, how much is it to add a washer and dryer hookup? So you got to get quotes in your area to understand, is there enough space in your electric panel for the 50 amp that it could use? If you do an all-in-one, it's just 110, so 30 amp. What part of the foundation, where are you going to put it? Is it going to require cutting, breaking, repouring concrete to get drains to go in? So if you're doing basement or unsubmerged, something, or is it there a wet wall that already exists where you can have space? So the cost can go anywhere from probably $4,500 to $12,000, right? Depending on what all you have to do. So that's why I said I look at the layout of the property, and then I look at, is it feasible to put this in due to space and due to where the water and drain would be? And that can drastically change the cost. And then that cost changes the math, which is why we do washer dryer hookup consideration before we do math. Great question. Thank you. I appreciate you signing my book. Big Val. No, I appreciate it. Hopefully what I put was okay. I always ask people if they have a sense of humor before you write anything in something that they're going to have for a while. It was really nice to meet you, Val. Josh, I'm in Spokane. I would be happy to take you to lunch for a book signing. Check out the Florida Panhandle if you can. Find chillaxing beaches and fun tourist spots close by. We love it there. So yeah, I'm looking for anywhere away from the coast because I don't want hurricanes, right? Trying to avoid those. That's why most of Florida, lots of Texas, hurricanes, tornadoes, eliminated where I'm going to move to, possibly move to. But yeah, you're in Spokane. Sometime you'll be over here. Sometime I'll be over there hanging out with Cody. We'll have to get together and I'll sign the book. I think we got a super chat that always comes up, different timing. See where that's at. From Mike. I remember that post Brian Davila conversation going very differently. Well, you were still defending yourself. You were still defending religion. That the conversation continued after Brian Davila is the problem, right? If I said something to Brian that in any way made you feel uncomfortable, that's a massive character flaw and mistake on my part, because that was not the intent. He tried to use religion to attack me. I attacked back. You were collateral damage just because you were in the room. Mr. Moore, question, cash flow or appreciation? And then actually I did say cash flow or appreciation. Thanks for your time. And yes, you are crazy. Somebody asked that question earlier. I have never considered appreciation. I only invest for cash flow, and cash flow is like the 8th metric that I look at. It's not first. It's close to last, but it's not last. Dion, if helpful from Kris, I could give the submarine overview I gave of Matt's boot camp. Saves me $4,000 to $6,000 a year. We should probably make a video separate on that and put it up together on how submetering works. That'd be cool. Nice wind chime. That is a gift from Frank. Frank and Cynthia sent that to me. Thanks. And this I aim to misbehave is a gift from my daughter. Anybody know what that's from? How do I get my wife to move out of our duplex, which she loves, to go into a low-end apartment? My solution has always been get rid of the wife. So you don't want to ask me relationship advice. I'd probably ask Matt or Zuber, those people that have been able to keep a wife, questions like that. My answer, other than get rid of the wife legally, would be what matters to her, right? Sometimes it's not the move or the place. I talked to a young couple in Florida. He wanted the house hack. She really liked where she's at. She doesn't care about retiring because she loves her job. Her dad loves her job. She's just one of those, I think we'll work until we die kind of people. That's fine. So early retirement was a motivation. It was not motivation. But cash flow, the house hack would increase their ability to have money by $600 a month. I don't know if this was an increase in cash flow or a decrease in expenses, but it was $600 a month to change. So we said, how about you take $200 of that cash flow and it goes to her. She could spend it on whatever she wants and he can never question it. It can go to getting your nails done. It can take your friends to lunch. You can buy crypto. You can do whatever you want with it. And he can never question you. And then the $400 doesn't go to him because he's the one who wants to house hack. That $400 goes to the continue to invest fund. The increased ability to have a little bit of money every month that she could spend without question was enough to say, hey, sure, let's go move there. And I'm not saying that's the case with you, but what matters to her? Is it The apartment might have better storage space. The apartment might be temporary. The apartment might lead to the forever home, because a couple of house hacks doesn't mean you house hack forever. It means you house hack to get things going and you get the momentum built, and then you go get the forever home that you might not get if you don't have that momentum. What matters to them that you can incorporate into the strategy? Like the result of the strategy is something that matters to them. That's what I would focus on. I'm making $11,000 a month once paid off in 5 to 10 years. Imagine if you didn't pay them off. You can be making $20,000 a month, because paid off properties is the lowest return you could get on your money. You lose levered appreciation, levered depreciation. You don't start new depreciation schedules. You don't start new levered appreciation schedules. And the cash flow can only increase by your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And that's actually just your principal and interest. There is no limit to the cash flow increase. I lost $1 million and over $1,500 a month for the rest of my life. So here's the breakdown. I had a single family house around 2017, 18. I owed $121,000. I paid it off. And the next year I bought a fourplex and the down payment was $109,000. So I paid off 121 and I bought 109. At the same time, I could have bought another fourplex for the $121,000 or less instead of paying it off. So I pay off the property. That paid off single family house was making about $1,000 a month. Now that it's paid off, it makes about $2,000 a month, maybe more, $2,200. Let's say $2,500, because the rent is $3,000. I've got taxes and insurance, and I got to set money aside for repairs and maintenance. So let's say I take $800 a month, takes care of taxes, insurance, and future expenses. So I'll say $500. So I got $2,500 a month in cash flow. A paid off property paying me $2,500 a month. Sounds great, right? It's my only single family house I have. It's because I had it before I invested. Well, I invest $109,000 into the fourplex. It's gone up $1 million in value. My house has gone up $70,000 in value since then, maybe 80. The cash flow on the fourplex is over $4,000 a month. It's like $4,400, $4,500 now. So let's say it was only $4,000. And the house is making $2,500, and it's actually making less because I'm actually setting aside more than that. So it's $1,500 a month less in cash flow. I can depreciate the fourplex that I purchased. The house is paid off, and it's already really far into its depreciation schedule. Bought in 99, so next year, halfway through the year after that, depreciation is completely gone, and I'm depreciating a fraction of what it's worth now. So paying down properties with investable money, to me, is always a mistake. Not always. For me, it would be a mistake. If it's the tenants paying it off and eventually it's going to be paid off, great. That's fine, because you're not losing to levered appreciation with your own money. So if it's the tenants paying it off, I'm on board. If it's you paying it off, I'm a fan of buying more than paying off. There is an exception. When we're 70, 75, and we don't want any more rentals and we have extra money coming in, maybe we don't want to buy any more rentals. Maybe we do then focus on debt pay down. But that is a long ways off from anywhere near you want to grow and you want to retire and you want to continue to grow in retirement. It sounds like you're in a great position though, right? This is something else. If you've been new to the channel, I haven't said this for a little while. There was a point in time where I was trying to figure out, do I pay off my house or do I save and invest? And my daughter at the time was 14 or 15, one of the most challenging times to have a daughter. But she had a nanosecond of genius. And she said this sentence, and it stuck with me, and I've used it over and over and over and over. She said, "It's really hard to make a decision when both outcomes are positive." It really is. Pay it off, invest, they're both right. One might be more right than the other for each of us, and it could be a different answer. So it was really cool because she said it in passing, and then a few years later when I said it to her, she doesn't remember saying it. Bruno, howdy. I'm going to list my basement and would like any advice about the contract. Would you recommend anything specific? Any suggestions to protect us? Do you have any model to share? I do not, because leases are very specific to states and sometimes counties. But what I do recommend is something I learned from my brother, who every now and then has a good idea. Like build a plywood airplane and throw me off the barn twice. Maybe that wasn't a good idea. But he did something really smart that I have done ever since he told me. Get a lease from an investor in your area, the tenant landlord resource page for your state, whatever it is. Hemlane's got leases, apartments.com, Zillow, they all have leases. Take a copy of that lease to your attorney that I recommend retaining for evictions. So you're probably going to give them $1,500. Just say, this is in case we ever go through an eviction in the future. You are retained. I can start working with you. So you don't have an added expense a month in the future when you don't get rent and you start the eviction process. But give them your lease and say, you're the person who's going to handle an eviction if we ever go through one together here in this court system, because they are an officer of the court in the court that you're going to be going through. What would they add to this lease to make their job easier if you ever do that together? They might not change anything. They might add something that really only matters to the judges in your area. But that's the best thing to do, is have an attorney. And they might charge you 15 minutes worth of work or a half an hour's worth of work, right? Because they bill per 15 minutes to go through your lease and make sure it's set up best for your area. And then use that lease. So thank you. My yield right now is 60% debt, 60% cash flow. So that is loan to value. So yield is a separate video. It's how to run the numbers on a rental. I've got that one. But the yield is annual profit. So how much do you make in profit every year? So you get, your rent comes in, you have to pay the mortgage, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And then you have to set aside money for expenses. So you have 5 things, right? Principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and expenses. I set aside 15% for expenses. If you're in a cheaper market like Gary, Indiana, the king of Gary, Mike sets aside like 20 or 25% because his roofs are a little bit cheaper, but not a lot. But his rents are a lot less. Like he gets, $1,100 to $1,500. I get $2,200 to $3,500 rents, right? So the rents are different. So if I set aside as much as him, it would be too much. And if he set aside as much as me, it'd be too little for him. So how expensive is your market? That's how much you set aside. But after that, how much is left is your profit every month. Times that by 12 gets your annual profit. Then you had a cost to acquire when you bought the property. How much was your down payment, closing costs, and money to make it rent ready? So your down payment is usually somewhere between 5 and 25%. Your closing costs are appraisal, inspection, anything else that you had to pay for, title fees. But your make ready costs, what did you have to fix for the tenants that are already there? Or what did you have to fix before you could lease it to someone else? That's make ready costs. That's your cost to acquire. So if you buy a $100,000 property, you put 25% down, that's $25,000. Closing costs are probably going to be $2,000, so 2% or so. So that's $27,000. Then maybe you spend $5,000 making it ready. So now you're at $32,000 a year, or to buy it. So your cost to buy it, cost to acquire was $32,000. Now you take whatever you profit and divide it by that. We usually use round numbers, right? You put $10,000 down, you want to make $1,000 a year, that's a 10% return, right? So those are nice round numbers, but you can actually do it. Yield is annual profit divided by cost to acquire. What you talked about is your debt to loan to value ratio, right? If you have $1 million property and you have a $500,000 mortgage, you have a 50% loan to value. So if you have a 60 to 40, that's a different metric. It'd be great to do like a Zoom call and go over some of this with you. Luke, would you consider putting 10% down payment on a property? This means I have to pay mortgage insurance. First duplex was 5% down and I paid mortgage insurance. So yes, mortgage insurance is not a deal killer. One of the reasons I don't like FHA, of the long list of reasons why I don't like FHA, is that mortgage insurance lasts the length of the loan. So the only way to get rid of mortgage insurance with an FHA loan is to pay it off, refinance, or sell the property. If you go conventional, mortgage insurance starts if you put less than 20% down. Now, some lenders will not do mortgage insurance for less than 20%. So you always have to ask around and see what's going on currently. But mortgage insurance can automatically go away when you hit 22% equity. So that could be from principal pay down or appreciation in your market. So you check with your lender if that's a thing. So if you get a conventional loan, mortgage insurance eventually will drop off. But yeah, I've done it. So I would do it again. It goes into the metric. It's just part of the math. Marlon, howdy. How does it feel to be home? If you are home, I am home. Yes. Feels good. Not here for very long. Throwing all my stuff in storage and taking off to Utah, Texas, Tennessee, and Florida to find a place to move to. And I'm going to say something that's probably going to cost me some subscribers, but I don't care. I'm not doing this for subscriber count or view count. I'm doing this for the few people that I can help buy properties and reach financial freedom. I invest in red counties and blue states on purpose because blue laws make landlords stupid rich. Harder legislation to pull permits means less people want to do it. Rent control means less landlords want to own here. But what does that do? Less people want to build here means less building means massive. This is the highest appreciating state in the country for like 3 or 4 decades now. You can Google it. It's a fact. Because it's such a blue state, people don't want to build here, so appreciation happens. But I own in red counties, so my evictions are still pretty quick. When I had to do it, Chesla had an eviction that was like 21 days. So they can be quick. They can be long too, but if you're in the blue county in the blue state, evictions either don't happen or they take months and months to do. So I don't want to own there. The reason I want to move out of Washington has nothing to do with my rentals. They instituted rent control in 2025, and I am making just that year, because the year before I'm also making more, but just from 2025, I'm making $3,300 more a month, not in revenue, in profit, because of rent control. Thanks. I'll take extra money. I want to move to a place where the argument with Brian DeVilla was over religion. I'm not a religious guy. I'm a minister in the Flying Spaghetti Monster Church. I do weddings as a pirate for free for anybody around me because I'm not trying to make money at it. I just like being a pirate and doing weddings, which makes me an atheist. I would rather be in Utah surrounded by Mormons all day, every day. Some of the best people you'll ever meet in your entire life, than to live in a town that even has a percentage ratio of liberals. So it isn't about the investing that's pushing me out of Washington. These laws and regulations are making me stupid rich. It's about the quality of life. I want to be in a place with people who have brains, and that's going to be the red counties, probably now in mostly red states. So that, if it costs me subscribers, that's my thought process. I want secure borders. That was what the Democrats wanted. Like Clinton, over 5 million deported. Obama, over 3 million deported. Trump's at 600,000 and morons are protesting. I want men out of women's sports. If you want men in women's sports, you're a retard. That's not about people being able to dress up and have their own life. That's about men having an advantage in competing with women. And I don't want kids sexually mutilated with transgender surgeries that they can't make a decision to get a tattoo, buy cigarettes, or join the military, but they can go and do something permanent to themselves. These are things that push me to the right. I'm pro-gay marriage. I'm not pro-choice. I'm pro-abortion. That's how not far to the right I am. But I'd still rather be surrounded by people that aren't insane. And so that's pushing me out of the state. No, thanks. And don't worry about asking questions twice. If I recognize it, I'll probably just say I did it. And sometimes people join this and then leave and join and leave. So I never mind answering the same question twice. Mike, I am insulting all my remodel units. Wait, insulating. Okay, that makes more better. Crayon eating Marines can't read. All your remodel units absolutely necessary for cold weather climate. Many ways to do it to save money. Maybe I'll make a video on. I think you should. When I redid this one here, this place that I'm at, there was uninsulated walls that were just 1x6s with drywall on one side and siding on the other. I was like, that's a wall. So yeah, made a huge difference here. The great Captain Charisma. Howdy, Riz. Can you go into how much to save each month from rents for repairs, vacancy, capex, etc.? I know it's basic. I just answered this, so hopefully you're here for that. You're new to this. Got my first rental check this month. I want to spend it all. We do want to spend it all. Take a picture of it, that first check, because that cool feeling of getting a check that you didn't go sell your life for 1 hour at a time never goes away. So the more expensive the market you're in, the higher the rents, possibly the lower the percentage you might need to set aside. Now, if you're in a super high-end area where everything has to be done, every contractor, it's 10 grand to just get them to come to your gated community, maybe it's a high percentage there too. But I'm in Washington, Class C properties, average house, 550,000, average duplex, 600,000. I set aside 15%, and that's enough. So if my rents are between $2,200 and $3,500, 15% is hundreds of dollars per month per unit. So I set aside $5,700 a month out of my portfolio. That's plenty. I've never spent more than $36,000 in a year yet. I will eventually. So I'm setting aside over 60 grand. I've spent, somewhere between 20 and 36,000 a year on repairs. That's replacing roofs. That's replacing septic systems. That's doing garage doors, some big expenses, some small expenses. If you're in a cheap market like Gary, Indiana, I would probably not do 15%. I'd probably do 20 or 25 like Mike. because your expenses are going to be a little less, but not a lot less, and your rents are going to be a lot less. Good evening from 51 in cloudy Southeast Ohio. Nice. It is cold here in the Pacific Northwest. I do miss Thailand. It did go all the way down to 79 degrees one time at night when I was there. I think we still went in the pool that night. Christine, howdy. Florida, the threat of taxes and insurance exceeding rent growth, even in no flood zones, is a real concern, even if the numbers worked when acquired. So if there's no rent control and area average rents make the deal work, I would look at Florida, because increases in expenses like taxes and insurance, ultimately, maybe not immediately, but the lag effect, get pushed onto the tenant. So I'm fine with that. It's when you put because Washington State went from 1% cap to 3% cap and put rent control in the same year. That can spell disaster. But I'm thinking about doing a whiteboard video pretty soon on, here's the title. Let me know if you guys want to understand this, because this is factual. It's just not going to sound like it in the title. This is the title of the video. Rents went down, but yours went up. Why? Because even if rents go down, my rents are still going up. Rents in my area could go down 5 or 10%, and I would still get a 7% increase next year and not be at the maximum. So it's rents going down long period and expenses increasing. And everybody who says taxes is a problem, everybody always says Texas taxes are the worst because they reset every year. So does Washington. What's your cap? 1%. What's our cap now? 3%. So tell me about taxes being a problem. Yes, it's a shock to the system, and it screws tenants over on rent. And it's that meme that goes around Facebook all the time, or whatever, Instagram too. The liberal sitting there going, I don't know why my rent went up. I didn't vote for that. I voted for property taxes to go up. Well, it goes to the tenant. An intermediary. There you go, for the 1031 exchange. I knew somebody with a brain would be here. I have a brain. It just doesn't work. Unless you're the VA. The VA says my brain is just fine. 0 to hero. I think you need to be well off in WA to buy a duplex. Would you agree? Making 80K. I bought most of mine making 60 or 50 or less. So if you're 80,000, you're not buying in King County. You're not buying in Tacoma City. But can I share a screen on here? Let me see. All right. So because Millennial Mike told me I was an idiot the other day for saying this, let me see. Where's the share screen? I'm going to share a screen here. This is not how I would look for properties at all. I would have an MLS search set up. So Centralia, Washington, I want to buy. I want beds and baths, 2+, 1+ bathrooms. Let's look. This is a tiny little duplex right here in Centralia, Washington for $409,900. The current cap for FHA loans is, for single family, is like 800 and something in Washington. For duplex, it's 900 and something. So this is about half the price of what FHA and conventional loan limits would be. You could run this through a mortgage calculator and figure out your mortgage payment would be like $2,370 a month for a duplex. Live in one side, rent out the other. The other side's probably going to rent for $1,000. We'll say if it was just a one bed, it might be 800 or whatever. So your payment is going to be $1,100 a month. This is almost exactly the numbers for a 3-bed, 1 or 2 bath that Josh and Mary moved into in Lacey, Washington. So yeah, you in an expensive area making that much money, you're not going to buy it. But you get down to Centralia, Washington. I have not run the numbers on this. This is just a tiny little place that I grabbed. It ended up being a duplex. I don't buy townhomes. I don't buy any of these. This is just a quick look through here. There's probably a way to check off small multifamily, but I'm not too familiar with this. Not a fan of trailers. David would jump all over that. But hopefully, yeah, it's showing you on here. So just one that jumped up. This looks like a trailer in a trailer park. I wouldn't buy that. So that's Centralia. That's just one town. Maybe there's other places that you could look at. You get far out from everywhere. Like here's Yelm, Washington. I own a rental here. And now we're in Yelm, Washington. You look here. There's not too many duplexes in Washington, but they exist. Single family houses all over. Prices I could probably do with that monthly making, you said 50,000 a year. I'd probably put 500,000 as the max. Look for things that have been on the market longer than that and think what makes sense. You just got to get away from the big cities, and you could find places that you can afford. Is there a multifamily? Get rid of townhomes, get rid of condos, get rid of lots, get rid of apartments, get rid of manufactured. What happens if we get rid of houses? Yeah, so there's no multifamily box for most of these, but where else do we own? Get out here to Graham. You could literally just look somewhere else. How far can you drive from where you're at? Even in an expensive state like Washington State, I found a one bedroom one side, one bedroom on the other side in Centralia, Washington, that somebody with a low income can buy right now. Would you want to live there? No. Is it a nice looking place? No, but it's 1 year, not forever. It gets you on the property ladder. It gets rental income on your tax returns for 2 years to remove your debt to income ratio on the next place that you buy. My first duplex, I still own it. It is not pretty. It's ugly. Nobody would want to live there. I don't know why my tenants want to live there, but somebody will rent anything. So no, I don't think you need to be well off. I think you do if you want to live in an expensive, high cost of living area. But Millennial Mike told me the other day it's absolutely not possible to find a duplex at an affordable rate. I looked at one Zillow search in less than 5 seconds and found one for $409,000. They exist. You have to hunt for them. You have to be hunting for them constantly. I think when I was talking to Mike, I said Walla Walla. That's even the middle of nowhere, way worse than Centralia. For Pierce County, probably a good income. $80,000 a year, you could probably buy a place there. You're not going to cash flow for a while. You'd be like maybe break even for a year or two. But how far are you willing to drive? Has your increased credit score changed the amount you have to put down on additional properties? I don't know. I've never had below a 700. So I think you get the best interest rate at like 740 if they see that. So it really comes down to what they see. Credit score right now. I just Credit Karma this. So I figure the lenders are going to see, so whatever this pops up at. We'll see if it's visible when it comes up. Lenders are going to see about 40 points less than that. So they're going to see like a 760 right now, which would get me the best rates. So whatever you do, keep working on your credit score. Mine always hovers around that 800-ish. Sometimes it'll go down for because I have a $200 balance on a credit card for 2 days, not even month to month, just for 2 days. I've seen it drop 24 points one time for that. But keep working on your credit score. It never hurts to have a better one. Do you furnish your properties? If so, do you increase rent if it is furnished? I do not, because I want long-term tenants. I want them to feel like it's their home. They decorated it. They filled it. Short-term would be totally different. All mine are 1 or 2 year leases. So I don't do that. It might be normal in some areas, or if you're doing midterm tenants, I probably would. Was it travelingnurses.com or whatever? I would probably do that too. Elena, my experience has been opposite. Kids keep them long-term because people don't want change schools. They want stability. So yeah, I've got kids that have been there for a long time, but I'm not in really good school districts because those people have more financial options. And it's not a metric. I probably own in a good school district. I own places without a fence. I own places. They all have parking. They all have washer dryer hookups. They're all in decent neighborhoods. Curtis. And then, so Elena, it might also be your state. Your state might have different criteria. I might have different criteria when I move to a new state. Curtis, if I actually move to Housac, maybe Central Florida, Tennessee, or North Carolina, there you go. I'll let you know what I think of Florida and Tennessee. CSK. My rental in Dallas-Fort Worth sat empty for 3 months despite $100 less than the others, $1,500, 2-bedroom. What was the guideline for reducing the rent and how soon frequently would you adjust? I would email me a copy of your listing. A lot of times I find it's the rental listing that's keeping a place empty more so than the rents. Most of us list a rental based on how we look at things. Age of building, square footage, how many bedrooms, and tenants don't. Tenants are looking for quality of life. What's in the area? Did you go into ChatGPT and say, I have a rental at 123 Main Street in Sumner, Washington. What's within 3 miles that a tenant might be attracted to? And you find out that there's a petting zoo and a capybara farm and the hiking trails by name. What is within distance that tenants could be attracted to? And then bullet point that. There should never be a paragraph. People are too lazy to ever read a paragraph. And a lot of times it's the listings that's costing us. I've done a few videos on This is why your listing sits empty. And it was a terrible listing here in Washington. That's the reason it was empty. Sometimes there's no demand. Something changed in your market. Employers went out of business. Something's on strike. There could be something local that's impacting it as well. But as a rule, it's usually the listing that's stopping units from getting rented out. KOS question: do you ever make significant property updates while a tenant is occupying the property as a justification to raise rents? Any reason to replace things like windows while occupied? So I have not replaced windows or carpet while occupied. I have replaced refrigerators, dishwashers. I have not painted while it's occupied. I've replaced garage doors. But I use the binder strategy to raise rents, right? The state of your rental, the amenities of your rental, your expenses do not set rents. Area average rents set rents. If your tenant is paying $2,000 a month and everything around you is $1,500 a month, I don't care if you plate the whole entire place in gold. They don't want to pay more rent. But if your rent's $1,500 and all the rents in the area are $2,000, you can kick the tenant out, spend a bunch of money on it, and then get $2,000. Or you can use the binder strategy, print out the property, what it's currently worth, what all of the rentals in the area look like on the map so they can see where they're at, what Section 8 will pay for that, what basic allowance for housing for the military will pay for that. Print out 5 or 6 of the places that are 2,000 or above. Go have the conversation. Say, look, you're at 1,500 for rent. All the rents around here are 2,000, 2,100. My taxes and insurance are based on the higher cost. I don't want to kick you out, but if you move, this is where my rents will be. If you move, these will be the rents you'll be paying. What do you think is fair? And almost every tenant so far across the board has split the difference. So if they're paying 15, rents are 2,000, they would ask you to raise it to 1,750, somewhere in the middle, maybe only 1,700. But that's a couple $100 a month. And a small increase to gross is a massive increase to net. That's what most people don't think through. So if you could do that with a conversation, and then the tenant said, yeah, I would love to do this, but if you have really outdated windows, single pane, not safe, not approved anymore, yeah, maybe it's time to update those. I would do that. I don't have any like that. But it could be they want the screen door, or they want the ceiling fan replaced, or they want the toilet makes noise or doesn't stop running, which you should probably want to fix anyway. So you could do some small repairs during that negotiation, or do some smaller repairs and then have that negotiation. But I would use the binder strategy before I would say, hey, I'm fixing the place so I can raise your rent. That's a good question, though. Millennial Mike, I don't think I target good school districts. Must be thinking of someone else. There are no good school districts in Cary. Just a conversation when we first met. You mentioned it sometime. V5. You often mentioned your kids are not interested in real estate portfolio. That is true, because they are not. Let's see, was there a follow-up to that? You often mentions that your kids are not interested in real estate business when you pass. If they were interested, how would you structure things differently? I would probably, because I don't do home equity lines of credit, cash out refinance, or anything like that to add debt to existing properties, probably have a few sold off. I'd probably, in my will, which I do right now, have it, divide the instructions on what to do. If somebody gets interested and we were to form a trust and one of them had the brains to actually run the trust, I'd probably do a trust like my brother did. But they have to have enough interest to actually be running the business towards the end. Good question. And that is the solution. I tell my kids all the time, if you want to run my rentals, I'll teach you how. No interest. Zero to hero is Darius. We went with you. Is zero to hero Darius? I'm missing it. Dungeon Dojo. Of the states you're looking to move to, do you have a current ranking of where you're leaning? Possibly Texas because of the size of it. The size of it, even though it's the most likely of the states to flip blue due to population trends, it would be a state where it would stay red with blue counties. So I'd be able to find a red county in a blue state there. But there's a lot of Texas that I like. I don't know anything about Utah or Tennessee. So that's really good, the research phase. Florida is a maybe, but the hurricane thing is still iffy. we'll see. So leaning Texas, open mind to Tennessee and Utah. Driven Addict. Local banks said they weren't aware of any long-term fixed rate products around here for multifamily. 20 to 30 year fixed rate on these, impossible. No. So multifamily, meaning 5 units or more, most lenders are going to say no. So you're going to want to check with Velocity Home Mortgage, Conway Home Loans. Those are the two that I know that offer fixed rate debt. Velocity does it up to $30 million. So it's not based on unit count. And Convoy Home Loans does it up to like 8 to 10 units, depending on how their lending is currently. So there are options for fixed rate debt for multifamily. But all of my information, to be completely transparent, Driven Addict, is for 4 units or less. I am a residential investor. If you want to learn about multifamily, there is Cody Davis Business Adventures and Multifamily Strategy. That's Cody and Christian. They used to be partners. Now they do their own thing. They've moved to different states. But they both invest in multifamily and they both know more about the debt structures than I do. I know that I was looking for DSCR loans for up to 8 units and fixed rate debt I found with Convoy and Velocity. So there are options out there. It's not going to be a bank. It's not going to be a credit union. It's going to be a mortgage company. Good question. Thank you. Andres. Dion, a little off topic, but do you think if billionaires pay their fair share in taxes, we would be a better and just nation? Absolutely not. It's a ridiculous question that gets posed by the left often because they think billionaires don't pay taxes. Elon Musk wrote a check for $11 billion in taxes, the largest one-time tax payment by anybody. And every company that the billionaires own pay the company corporate tax. They pay the employee tax of the employer side of the taxes. And billionaires pay way more taxes. The top 1% pay over 40% of the taxes. So it's a ridiculous question that I see posited all the time. It's not ridiculous that you asked it. It's ridiculous that it gets asked so much on social media that it tells me that there are retards out there who think that's true. And so they think, oh, if there were no billionaires, we'd be fine. No, we need more billionaires because that's where innovation and employment comes from. That's why they get a tax benefit and they don't pay themselves on wages. When somebody like Warren Buffett says, my secretary or administrative assistant pays more in taxes than I do. That's what he said. On income, sure. They don't pay with a paycheck. They pay capital gains tax. They borrow against their assets, which is a risk if it goes down in value. And the more taxes is not the solution. The stop the fraud is the solution. Right now in Washington State, there are 538 Somali-owned daycares, just the daycares. That doesn't count adult daycares. That doesn't count adult transportation modules. We're talking about billions to the trillions disappearing in each state to fraudulent companies that don't exist, where the government is just giving away money. And the answer in Washington State was, let's make it illegal. Let's make it a hate crime to go and knock on the door of a Somali daycare and ask if is it a daycare? Can you enroll your kids here? That's a crime. This is billions of dollars being funneled into NGOs, non-government organizations, to then be donated to the Democrat Party so that they can get reelected. What happens when we stop the funding of daycares to Minnesota? All of a sudden, $186 million is not going there. The DNC goes into $15 million in debt, has to borrow to stay running. So there's probably Republican schemes too, where they've got businesses that are getting money from government funds and then it funds through and becomes a donation. We need to stop that. It's not more taxes. It's proper accountability for the taxes we already have in existence. Like the solution isn't gun control. It's enforcing the gun control laws we have now. Strictly. Hopefully I didn't lose you there, Andres. It's a good question. It just gives me a visceral reaction answer because so many people think billionaires don't pay taxes. I'm a multimillionaire. Do you know how much I paid in taxes this year? You know what my tax return is? This will be the last year. 2024 was the last year I think I carried forward a loss. I think 2025, I'm finally going to pay taxes. So I've been investing for over a decade, never paid any rental income tax. Over $40,000 a year in property taxes. I mean, technically I pay it. The tenants are paying it through rent. But that $43,000 in taxes wouldn't happen if I went out and had a W-2 job. You know how much taxes was paid on all of the labor to maintain my properties, all of the materials to buy to replace things in my properties? So there are people that think millionaires don't pay enough taxes, and I'm paying 10 times what they do in taxes. The bottom 44% of earners in the United States paid zero in taxes. The bottom 31% received more in taxes than they paid due to earned income credit, child daycare tax credit, Section 8, BFET. The tax program is designed to punish the middle class, tax the wealthy, and get a voting base from the poor. So I don't think the problem is millionaires. It is never the problem that there are millionaires. It's the problem that our taxes are being completely mismanaged. Why are we sending $20 million to another country to have a transgender Sesame Street class? Tell me that wasn't laundering money. That's the problem. Greg, I don't do real estate, but your vids motivate me to stay on track. I try to say it often that I don't care what asset class you choose. Start and grow a business, right? With the goal of growing it to the point where somebody else runs the day-to-day so you have time freedom. Invest in crypto, stocks, find a long-term strategy that creates wealth to where your time doesn't have to be sold 1 hour at a time. Real estate is the vessel that I used. I recommend Joe Kuhn for stocks, Kuhn. You got investors that go long distance. You got short-term rentals. We've got a community of people here who are focused on time freedom. That's the focus of my content. So hopefully I keep you motivated with that. Jeremy, howdy. Sold primary and rental house to buy dream house. I'm using another VA loan. Can I use yours since you haven't used yours yet? Rate today is 5.7. Using yours this year, duplexes. So I'm probably going to use mine this year because I want to increase the debt. I'm going to have a couple of options. One is VA loan. One is I'm selling this place that doesn't have a mortgage on it. If I find a good market that I like where enough of the boxes are checked, not all, nothing checks all the boxes, but enough of the boxes are checked. I find a safe neighborhood with pet-friendly fenced yards, enough economic drivers, right? I want several sources of tenants. I don't want to be just next to one base or one port. And I feel confident there after I buy where I'm going to live, which is either going to be a house with ADU or a duplex, triplex, or fourplex, right? Then I might redeploy funds through a 1031. I might use the VA loan there. So I don't think you could use it, but it'll definitely be used to buy up to a fourplex. And did you know, Jeremy, you can buy 5 units with a VA loan? I've had so many people, agents and investors tell me VA loan only goes up to 4 units. So if there's anybody who wants to bet me, I'll bet you a $5 super chat that you can buy 5 units with a VA loan. And I'm about to prove it. 10 seconds. I'll give you a second if you want to make the $5 super chat bet. A VA loan will allow you to buy a house with an ADU. A house with an ADU is considered true single-family lending. It's only a house. You can buy a duplex or a duplex with an ADU. You see where I'm going? Or a triplex with an ADU. Or a fourplex with an ADU. That's 5 units. So it is entirely possible to do that, and I will be looking into all of those options. And I'm not buying properties to increase cash flow. I am buying properties to redeploy funds, to own properties in the area that I'm going to live because I'll be the trusted boots on the ground. And I don't know that it will be an equity play, but I'm so far into investing. An example is I won't be selling any of my properties that have mortgages on them because I have such good interest rates. I don't want to lose that. That's the asset. But I have 2 paid off properties. I might redeploy those funds. Single family house in Lake Lawrence in Yelm, Washington, and a duplex on the water in Port Orchard, Washington. Alex Hayes official. Howdy. Did you ever pay for a cost segregation study on your properties? I have not, and there's a couple of reasons. One, I've never paid until this year rental income tax on my properties. So doing a cost seg would just give me more to carry forward. Not worth it. While in my last 2 years, a cost segregation study would have been great if I could use it against my W-2 income, because my last 2 years of working, I made a lot of money. But I'm not a real estate professional. I don't work more than 751 hours in real estate, and I don't work more in real estate more than I did in my W-2 job. So I couldn't have qualified as a real estate pro and done that. So the main reason is I wouldn't have really benefited from the cost segregation study. The other reason is I believe in depreciation. I love that I have depreciation over 27 and a half years of owning my properties. If you do a cost segregation study, what it really does is it captures 15 to 25% of your possible depreciation from 27 and a half years and takes it in year 1. So it gives you a bigger write-off against stuff. So Matt, the lumberjack landlord, got 6-figure check return because his wife, his spouse, counted as a real estate professional. He had good income years. He was able to write off against a lot of income. So it was definitely a benefit to him. But for me, since I wouldn't really benefit because I'm not writing against my W-2 income, I would just be carrying forward a bigger loss. I no longer have 100% of my depreciation to use over 27 and a half years. If I take 25% of it in year one, I only have 75% remaining, which means I'm depreciating less in the future. And the power of depreciation is I'm depreciating today's dollars against future weaker dollars. So, no, not yet. Luke, big fan of Zoom name. Let me know how I can invest. I would love to see local community grow in town. Thanks. The reason the Zoom name is here is I have documented video proof from when my Leering Center was put into business. So if I ever start scamming the government out of millions in the future, this is my document that that name was being used. Firefly, because you're a big damn hero. Exactly. Brown coats. So you know what that's from. Love it. 85 in the chat, but only 34 likes. Hit that like button. Every time you hit the like button, an angel gets its wings. That is a fact. Brought to you by your friendly neighborhood atheist. I have a single family house with a cyclone fence. Neighbors on both sides have pit bulls. Should I up a privacy fence? Not a huge yard. As long as it's not a fence they can get over or around, I don't care so much. They bark at a privacy fence as much as they do when they can see through when somebody walks through the fence. So I'm a fan of fences that keep dogs in or out. Have you considered West Georgia or Alabama? I swear we're not too crazy out there. It depends. If I go through, I have a problem with racism. My family is very racist, and I joined the Marine Corps, so I became the anti-racist. And so, like, I've eliminated states like Kentucky completely because of the racial segregation that still goes on that's unconscious. So I guess I would have to see what it's like in Alabama or West Georgia. I went to DC, could never live there because of the racism. Southern California, could never live there because of the racism. I worked in the onion fields as a kid, got beat up by the Hispanics all the time because I was a little white kid taking their jobs. I mean, I had to lose fights for 3 or 4 months before I finally felt like I fit in. Which part of Utah? South by Zion, maybe a little to the left, southwest of there. There's a town I don't remember the name of that I'm looking at because I don't want too harsh of winters and too harsh of summers. Like if winter or summer is the bad thing, I can travel that time of year. But I also don't want to have to winterize rentals or summer. Just not a fan of summer too much either. So yeah, that's the part of Utah, but I haven't been. So I need to. I mean, I've driven through, spent like a week get hotels and stuff, and went to Zion and up and around to Bryce. Did my traveling there, but I haven't spent time to see what I think of the area. Elena, there's lots I need to Lear. Wow, thank you. That's okay. I'm here to answer as many questions as I can every week, and emails too. Jack, howdy. Hey everyone, hope you're all doing well and recovered fully after the Vegas event. I hope they are too. I want to take a stab at that. I'm probably wrong. If you go through shop insurance, maximize the lowering of your overhead, investing at good marks. There you go. Andres. Dion, I think you missed the point. No one is arguing about the need to have a secure border and deport the criminal illegal immigrants, but fascist MAGA is deporting people in such an inhumane way. So Obama had the cages. Obama deported 5 million, no, 3 million. Clinton did 5 million. We're only at 600,000. There is nothing inhumane going. The protests are happening in the states where they won't comply. I said we would like to come to prisons and collect the person from a cell so they're not at risk and we're not at risk and take them out of here. And morons are going and protesting and saying, don't comply with ICE. No. And there is no, they need to commit a crime. 60% of the people that have been deported committed a crime, but only 14% committed violent crimes, right? Did you know that drug trafficking is not a violent crime? DUI is not a violent crime. Child pornography is not a violent crime. Like there's a list of crimes that count in that 60% that are people like, oh, they didn't murder anybody. They didn't rape anybody. We don't need to be this way. No, if you come in illegally, I just went to Thailand. They do traffic stops. And they check your papers right now in Thailand today. And if you aren't there on a visa violation, you can do 60 days with your visa. You can extend for 30. But if you're one day beyond that, arrested, fined, deported, not allowed in ever again. I mean, you have to go through a hearing to come back ever again. And that's just a regular country. Why is it the United States is the only one that's not allowed to have a secure border? And when a moronic idiot, Biden and Kamala, opened the border and we have 7 to 20 million people come across the border, we saw the caravan trains coming up from South America from released prisons that everybody says, oh, that never happened. It's like we weren't there. It's like the people that say, oh, no, there were never COVID restrictions. You were allowed to go to the beach. You were allowed to go to church. No, we lived it. We know it's real. And those people are in the country right now. I'll tell anybody that says we're not deporting enough to say the name, what is it? Laken Riley. Can you even say it? A 20-minute death at the park recorded on 911 tape that wouldn't have happened if he wasn't here because he'd come in illegally. No, you don't get my sympathy on that. I get it. If you don't like me and you want to block my channel, I'm totally fine with it. But we need a secure border. I've taken the oath twice. Constitutional oath for the Marine Corps to defend the Constitution of the United States, which means we need a border, and the constitutional oath for law enforcement for Washington State to defend the Constitution of Washington State. Without borders, we don't have a country. Talk to your friends who came to the country legally. My friend that I was in the Marines with married a woman from Colombia, jumped through all the hoops, spent all the money, got her here in America. She is the one who demands ICE more than anyone. Because if you can come here legally, you should be able to do that. We need immigrants. What we don't need is illegal immigrants, because this nation was not built by immigrants. It was built by settlers. Settlers come to a country to create opportunity. Immigrants come to a country looking for opportunity. We need more deportations. And there's nothing inhumane going on. We can see what's going on. The cages were under the other presidents. People are like, oh, they took a kid. They arrested a kid. No, a 5-year-old was abandoned by his dad. It's been debunked, but people keep repeating it like it's a fact. Would love to sit and have a beer with you, Andres, and go over this and have an actual opinion. This is real estate channel. So I try to stay off topics of politics and religion, like at the gaming store where it says, leave that stuff at the door. Give me an example of something inhumane. 56 people died in ICE custody under Obama. Nobody had a problem with it. It's the Trump that you have a problem with. Texas, howdy. What side hustles would you recommend for paying off debt? $80,000 in student loans, currently a CDL driver. So it's very similar. I had $89,000 in debt I actually didn't know about till the divorce, and I was teaching at a CDL school. So I was making less than you, because CDL drivers make more than CDL instructors. I split my debt service. I split my money into 2 piles. So there's 3 types of debt. So Texas CDL geek, 3 types of debt. The first debt is bad. Credit card, consumer, student loan, unless you're going to use your degree to make more money. Loans with an adjustable rate, balloon payments can be worse debt. But your bad debt is debt you need to stop making. No more credit cards. Don't use them to eat out. Try not to buy now, pay later for furniture or anything like that. Just suffer through, not adding to bad debt. Good debt is money that pays you more than it costs you. And then the worst debt is that adjustable rates, loan reevaluation periods, balloon payments, credit cards that have super high interest rates. So I had 2 piles. You make money and you have certain bills you have to pay. You have to pay your rent, you have to pay to eat, you have to pay for whatever part of your insurance is, your kids' things that they've got to do, right? You've got your required expenses. Try to increase your income so that there's a gap between how much you make and how much you spend, right? So for me, it was a little bit of the latte factor. Get rid of the streaming services, don't take vacations, drive an older car. So it's a little bit of everything. It's not like one thing fixes anything, but you try to spend less. And then I cut my money into 2 piles. I made minimum payments on everything I owed money on. And then I had half my, what they call disposable or expendable income, the money that it doesn't require you just to live. What's left? So if you have $500 a month at the end of the month that you don't have to spend, I took $250 and I made extra payments on the debt. I focused on the worst debt first, high interest credit cards, anything with an adjustable rate, that kind of stuff. Then the other I saved for the first house hack, right? I wanted to get into good debt and I wanted to get out of bad debt. So I focused on worst debt for 2 years. I saved until I had enough to get in my first house hack. So I reduced my housing expense. That was way better than cutting streaming services or not taking a vacation or driving old cars. My housing payment went from $1,500 a month in an apartment to $300 a month at my duplex. So I still paid a little for housing, but I reduced it a lot. I'm surprised there's still 86 people watching after I made a political statement that pisses people off. I can have opinions too, but that's not what the content's about. If you can get into that house hack and reduce your biggest expense, that would be really good too. But your minimum payments on your bad debt's not good enough, right? So I wouldn't say I'm just going to make minimum payments and I'm going to buy good debt things, because minimum payments sometimes make the amount that you owe go up. You're not paying enough to cover the interest as well. So I would split every extra penny that you have in half, go half for bad debt or worse debt, and half for investing to get into a house hack. And then I saved and I bought another duplex. And about year 4 or 5, the cash flow and my money from work increased enough to tackle all of the remaining bad debt. Doesn't happen fast. It takes years, but it is definitely worth doing. Barbosa, howdy. Good stuff. Bought a triplex 9 years ago when I was 26, 433 FHA. 30 years. I owe 355 now, and it's worth 900 to 980. I'm in Massachusetts. Monthly mortgage is 3602 yearly. So that's a good start on that. I wish in 2020 you had refinanced without taking any money out to get it off of FHA, so you'd lose the mortgage insurance. And you could have got a probably 3% interest rate. So you would have lost mortgage insurance and decreased your payment probably down to like $2,900 a month to $3,100 a month. Would have drastically increased your cash flow. So I don't know that we'll ever see interest rates below 4% again, but keep your eyes out. If it ever hits 3% again for a mortgage, I'd refinance. You might refinance what's left. No, the interest rate's too high now, because if you bought it down and you were owner occupying, you could probably get like a 5 something, but you'd increase your interest rate. But to get rid of the mortgage insurance, I don't know that it's worth it right now. But keep an eye on interest rates in case it ever happens again. And I'm putting my 4-year-old to bed tonight. Ciao. There we go. RV 1288. Looking to buy my 3 single-family rentals in Cape Coral, Florida. Don't know if that's a good area right now. I had a friend who invested in Cape Coral. The north side of Cape Coral 5 years ago, the city had plans to double the population size. So a ton of duplexes went in. So they might be a little saturated right now on rents to price ratio, and it might look a little rough. But Fort Myer and some areas near there are some areas that I think are good. If you get into Cape Coral, specifically, on a canal is going to cost you twice as much as off a canal. And Cape Coral gets hit by hurricanes. So my friends bought in Cape Coral on a canal and then bought a duplex and a house because everybody said hurricanes never hit here, and they got wiped by a hurricane. And they moved to, I think they're in Tennessee. So monthly mortgage is 3602 and monthly rent is 5250. I make 70,000 a year on my W2. I want to scale, but don't have money hanging around. Credit score 760. Any advice? The advice that nobody likes to hear. So the first one is, what can you do to make more at your job? Of course. What can you do to decrease your expenses? Simple things sometimes in the beginning. Have you used the binder strategy on all of your tenants to get the rents where you can? Have you shopped insurance to make sure you've raised your deductible so you can lower your premium to increase the amount you get to keep out of the rent? Those are all the advice that you'll get from anybody who invests. But the part that nobody likes is time. I started saving in 2011. I would love to buy at the bottom of the market. Nobody knew it was the bottom of the market, but it was 2 years before I got a duplex. And then it was 2 more years before I got another one. Those years at the bottom there, that's when everyone would say, buy 2 or 3 properties a year and you'd be a multimillionaire now because they've gone up so much since then. Yeah, so it would have been nice. But 1 every 2 years was plenty for me. It's a 10-year plan. What would it look like if you tried to make more, tried to spend less, and saved every month for a year or 2? How much would you have for a down payment? Rinse, repeat. Ian, went under contract today on my 4th deal. Congratulations. First multifamily. $411,000 property that should bring in $3,600 to $4,000 per month. 1 tenant in place at $1,800. $225.50 a month DSCR loan. Cheers. Cheers. What made you go DSCR? I'm curious. That's not a bad loan product. I mean, there's probably several reasons to go DSCR loan. Like if you don't have consistent work income, or you don't have If you don't qualify, they'll use the property too. Is it fixed rate debt? That'd be the most important thing to me with the DSCR loan. Cool. Congratulations. Then have you learned what the binder strategy is and how to use it on a property you just closed on? Why do you travel to Southeast Asia over all the other places in the world? 0 to hero. Great question. There's a few criteria that I like. Now I do go to Portugal, and this year I'm going to Mallorca, so it's the island off of Spain. I like to trace warm weather and good scuba. Okay. The hardest thing to find outside of the United States is a country that still likes the United States. So Vietnam, Thailand, the Philippines, they like the United States. We are a tipping culture. So if you're in a country that has primarily tourism as income, tipping culture countries are liked. I've been to Germany, they didn't like us. I've been to Portugal, they don't really like us as much. Spain, the places I've been, Colombia was okay. The scuba wasn't as good as what I like. So I chase places where Americans are liked. A reasonable amount of safety is good. And I travel for scuba diving. That's my main drive for scuba. Now, it does help to go to a country where the money goes farther, right? That doesn't hurt either. Like if I want expensive stuff, I could travel in the US. But Southeast Asia, the culture, I'm a fan of the food. I just spent 3 months there, and I basically got a massage every other day for $9, full Thai massage. And you don't get that in the US. It's $60 for not a good one, $100 for a decent one. I'm not sure if you're paying attention, but $6 to $9 is totally a different experience than $100. You had me at Capybara Farm. Yes, there is one in Spanaway, Washington. So you got to know what's around you. I increase rent 3 to 4 to 5 annually as my landlord for commercial property charges me a standard increase that caused my market inflation. How does that compare to area average rent? Sometimes a black swan event like a pandemic, an eviction moratorium, a stock market crash can make rents spike or go up or down in an area. And so I will adjust rents based on what happens in the area. Now, rent control took that away from me, so I'm limited and required now to do a 7% increase every year. That's 3 times what I was going to do, almost. I basically do 5% every other year. So that would be 2.5% per year. And now I'm doing 7% every year. It's almost triple as a requirement. Dungeon Dojo, about half an hour behind on live stream, but you just asked about the I am to be missed by a Firefly. Thanks. Yep. I made 101. It was putting 20% down. It was capped at 670K. I work in Redmond. Sumner is 1 hour and 15 minutes, and I got work at 14:30. Yep. 670K would be for single family. You can get, so check with different lenders, the caps change, but every time you add a unit for a duplex, a triplex, or a fourplex, the cap goes up. So if that was your cap for a fourplex, it could be related to your debt to income ratio too. For you personally, it can be related to your credit score. It can be related to all kinds of elements about you that have nothing to do with the property. So yeah, it changes all the time. Yep, you had a 760 credit score. Barbosa, good stuff, Dion. I bought it with triplex 9 years ago when it was 26. Nice. Went through over that one. Ian, do you prefer floating vinyl tile or glue down tile for rental units, and why? If I put tile, I have only done glue down. Then I use LVP everywhere else. I've done LVT, so it looks like tile, but it's luxury vinyl plank or tile. And cushion bottom, minimum 22 mil wear for wear. I liked the 30 mil wear when I can. So it just depends on what they have available when I go to buy it. Elena, I think lots of stuff in the news is full of crap. Its intentions is to change laws to benefit these evil elites. Left, right, all the same, all trying to get your money in the pocket to enslave you. I think that's true until you add the open borders, men and women's sports, and transitioning children. There is no ownership in there. That's just insane things that I would fight. Like, I'm not right. I'm not on the right. I want gay people to get married. I'm not pro-choice. I'm pro-abortion. But those 3 things make me vote Republican. And without a border, we don't have a country. Barbosa, good stuff, Dion. I bought a triplex 9 years ago. Actually, it's gone in there a few times. Everything I do opposition what society tells me, and it's got me stability. I'm not rich, but where I come from, I'm rich. Same with me. I'm not rich. I hang out with guys that make way more money than me, have way more cash flow, way larger things. But that stability, that's amazing. JNYC. I'm in Tucson, was looking at my options to lease, is about to renew it in April. I haven't found anything here that cash flows other than by room. Thoughts, move, stay. I would expand your market out a little bit before I would move to a new market. And I've bought deals that didn't cash flow. How many boxes can you check off before cash flow? Washer dryer hookups, good parking, safe neighborhood, pet friendly fenced yards, side by side units. Like buying a break even deal that checks enough of the other boxes will be what sets you free in 5 to 10 years. It's not always about cash flow. Jeremy, yes, if you can cover some vacancy and property management, I'll let you know how many my most current expenses goes with loan guy and recommend it or not. He's been good so far. Have done 3 VA loans. Nice. It's a good thing to mention that most people that have a VA loan option don't realize they can do it more than once. Jim, would you purchase the duplex you are doing to be selling at its current value as an investment property, or would the numbers only work as a house hack? Well, here you go, Jim. Run this through a calculator. I'm listing for 715. Rents. So my tenant is at 21.25 because my tenant takes care of the place when I'm traveling, so they get a significant discount. But the place right next to me, which is also a 2121, rented for 2,600 and 2,550. So area rents run it at 2,400 for the duplex. It's 2,400 and 2,400. That's the numbers I would run it at 715 with a 6 to 6.3% interest rate. Because investment property, owner occupied right now, you're probably going to get 5.9, buy the rate down or whatever. So run it at like 6.3. Insurance on a place like this is $1,300 a month, $1,300 a year. Sorry, not a month. And the property taxes are $4,700. They might go up a little with the purchase. So let's say $6,000 for property taxes. And tell me what yield you get. But it's not side by side, it's up down. So it has a negative. It does have washer dryer hookups. It has lots of parking. There's over 6 spots for a duplex. That's plenty. It's beach front, but on the other side of the road. And the property is elevated. So no chance of flood. Even a king tide can't hit the house. So plenty of parking. It's walking distance to the ferries. So you are walking distance to the airport. You can take a ferry to the tram to the airport. These are all the pluses. So as a standard duplex, if it was off in the middle of town, I'd probably sell it for 600. But on the water, elevated with the view rents that you get, because a duplex like this, a 2-1 in this area will rent for 1,900 to 2,000. But you put it right on the water like this with lots of parking, you're going to get 24, 25. So you tell me, would you buy it at 715? I'm going to list it as a house hack, an owner occupied with one tenant in place, and I'm going to list it as a small multifamily investment opportunity. So people can buy it as owner occupied or as not. That's up to them. Driven Addict, thanks for the response. I've actually asked you a question on the membership call before. I'm trying to follow your book and get good long-term fixed rate debt on this 6plex when balloon is due. Cool. So those are the 2 I would use for a 6 unit. Just the ones I mentioned: Velocity Home Mortgage, Convoy Home Loans. Mr. Moore, I hear you talk about you finally bought a small bit of Tesla. Why have you never found interest in REITs being a real estate investor? I am not an investor in anything that doesn't cash flow. So I'm not an investor in Tesla. I bought some because it went on sale. But I like cash flow. So REITs, they have to pay 95% or 90% or whatever of their profits out as a dividend. Sure. Okay. You have no control. The binder strategy does no good. My ability to communicate does no good. My value add of turning a den into a bedroom or adding parking or putting it in a privacy fence, I have no control like that. I get no depreciation. I get no levered appreciation on my investment. I get appreciation on what I invest. I don't get the levered appreciation on what I invest. I get no levered depreciation. I get actually no depreciation whatsoever. So REITs are just like stocks to me. If I was a stock investor, I would incorporate some REITs in there. But I invested in rentals. It ended up making work optional. And at some point, and so for me, this could be different for everybody. I think if net worth passes 5 million, mine's a little over 3 million now, right? But if it passes 5 million, I think that's when I would diversify. I diversify my portfolio in 2 specific ways. The first one is my properties are at least 10 miles apart, right? I have two that are 7 miles apart, but that was way later in investing. But the rest of them are at least 10 miles apart, close to several different economic drivers. And the second way is I have three different types of tenants, right? Section 8, military, working, and retired. So I'm diversified in my asset class. If my portfolio grew to where the net worth was over 5 million, I would probably start putting 1 or 2% into stocks, 1 or 2% into crypto, 1 or 2% into REITs. Maybe I'd buy a business or two that I don't need to run or manage, right? But I'm not there, and I don't want to get there. Actually, I don't want more net worth. I don't want significantly more cash flow either. I just want time freedom to do what I want. But the money piles up, so I'll keep putting it to work. So eventually it probably will hit the 5 million point. None of those asset classes are better than the other. I chose one that matched me, right? I think stocks are better if you have a long term for compound interest to do its thing, and you make significantly more to have more to invest. I didn't have either. I had so little to invest that house hacking was probably the biggest catalyst for me. And I can't house hack Amazon. Can't house hack REITs. Haven't figured that out yet. Jack, something I've always wondered about your veteran ADU strategy is, what if you got a fourplex that has a garage with units on top and then rented out the garage as storage? Money's on top of monies. Yes. So, well, the other thing is you could use the VA loan to buy a fourplex and then build an ADU, right? Or convert the garages to more rooms. You can continue to do that. It's when you go to sell it that your 4-unit limit usually becomes a restrictor again, because if you have more than the ADU, you might lose the ability to sell to FHA or VA or conventional. And then you have to find those people that know what a DSCR lender is. St. George is nice in Utah, can get hot in the summer, though. That was my thing, Nick, is I don't really want winter and I don't really want summer. But right now I travel in the winter because I live in the Pacific Northwest. So if I move to someplace like Utah, then I travel in the summer. So there you go. Texas CDL Geek, what do you think of the ADU strategy? I own a property with ADU. I search for them. They're in my search. I would buy properties with ADUs. I'm not a builder. If you want to build, you should watch Derek, that ADU guy. He builds ADUs. That's his thing. He's got a great content on his YouTube channel, which is that ADU guy. It's an asset class most people skip. My advice when it comes to ADUs is I have a search up for, duplex, triplex, fourplex, small multifamily, single family. But then I also search for everything an ADU can be called, because we don't know what the listing agent calls it. So ADU, DADU, JADU, accessory dwelling unit, auxiliary dwelling unit, granny flat, mother-in-law house, casita, like whatever it could search for that. My best property is my triplex, which is a house with an ADU. It's because it's a house with a duplex on the same property. I wouldn't have found it if I didn't have that search going. I think ADUs are great. I would prefer a house with an ADU to a duplex because it's more like, remember the first criteria, number one, as similar to a single family house as possible. A single family house is as similar as you can get. So love the ADU strategy, but I'm not a builder. Zero to Hero. Do you have book suggestions for taxes and real estate? How do you pay zero in taxes? I've paid the last 2 years. Tax strategy, get a tax guy that understands it, that focuses on real estate. Always be buying, right? Starting new depreciation schedules, paying off debt will make you pay taxes sooner. I actually kind of look forward to paying out taxes on this year. It means I finally made enough money to pay taxes. I don't have a problem with paying taxes, but I want to use every tax write-off that I can. And so, did you write off every single meal that you've had for the last 5 years? Because, for 5 years now, meals have been a write-off. There was 1 year where it dropped down to 50% only, but every single meal, because COVID, they came out with the CARES Act and they were like, hey, we need to help restaurants recover. So it had nothing to do with this being a work-related meal. It came down to, do you eat out? If you eat out, we'll give you a tax write-off because we're trying to encourage people to spend money at restaurants. So if you weren't paying attention, there were people who lost $30,000, $40,000 a year in write-offs because they weren't writing off every single meal. They were thinking, well, if I could name somebody and we talked about business, sure, I'd put a write-off in there. No, I go to Subway, that's $13 off my taxes. See how long that lasts, though. That could change. What can you do that is a write-off? When you're making a decision, don't let the tax tail wag the dog, but don't miss a tax write-off if it's something you could take advantage of. So books on taxes, Tom Wheelwright, the guy from Rich Dad Poor Dad. I mean, I love Cash Flow Quadrant because it makes us think differently. But Tom Wheelwright probably wrote some other books on taxes. I just hire a pro. was like if I was going to put a roof on my house, would I go to YouTube and think, do I want a California weave? No, I hire a pro. It goes, we're in Washington. What works? You're the one that has to warranty it. Go with that. Good question, though. I second St. George. It's nice. It's probably the town I was looking at. Barbosa, I bought it. Got that one in there. I've read that a couple times. Nick, I think you were putting it in because I'm so far behind. I got to get through these quick. I try to answer questions as quick as possible. In the future, if you come back next week or the week after, I know it's a little, but if you put in like $1 super chat or 99-cent super chat, it jumps it to the top. So you never have to put them in twice again. And I will make sure I get to it because I'm going to be wrapping up here in a few minutes. Next week, because I'll have my voice back, there will be a members only call after the live stream, which is where we analyze deals. So if you're a member, we're going to analyze deals or look at a rental, whichever one you want to do. Nick, we 100% absolutely need a stronger border. We could use a faster and more efficient system to legal immigration as well. We do. If we could secure the border, like Poland, automatic turrets. You try to cross, you're dead, period. Let's do it like other countries do. I don't have a problem with that. That makes it humane. One person dies, nobody else comes across. Then we can focus on funding for legal immigration, which we absolutely do need. Our reproduction is dropped below 2, which means we're a failing country unless we can increase. We don't need illegal. We don't need people who are already willing to break laws to come in. We need people who are willing to go through the process to come in legally, streamline it. Everybody who's like, oh, Trump doesn't like illegals. Well, of course he doesn't, but he's married a couple from another country. I'm taking David to argue, know your politics and you don't care. I appreciate it. No one's wrong on politics. We're just different. I have my belief. You have your belief. Some of yours might be mine. Some of mine are not. Some of mine are not yours either. But thank you for that, Felix. I appreciate it. And Andres, I meant no insult to you. Thank you. The accidental landlord. Howdy. What's up? We're at one rental at a time. Family. Great meeting folks in Vegas. Time to catch up on sleep. Yeah, no kidding. Texas City Yogi. Thank you. Thank you so much. Brett. I've had units sitting vacant for 6 months here in Denver. Not just a me problem. Our rental market is a bad place. My reserves have been depleted and my rents no longer cover mortgages. Ouch. That is interesting. I wonder what changed in Denver. I would like some information on your properties and that they're renting, because there are markets that are having problems. What was the one in Texas where they came out with 50,000 new units online? If you have 5 to 10,000 come online in a decent area, it increases rents. But if you have 50, it can crash rents. So that's why reserves never be in one market. All mine are spread out. And I don't need market rents to survive. So that sounds like you have a big challenge going on, though. I would definitely, if you're investing in Denver, that to me would be like investing in Seattle here. I wouldn't own in Seattle if somebody gave me the properties. You would lose if I gave you a property in Seattle next year, you'd lose money. Guarantee it. Yes, missed that. There you go. Big girl, howdy. New here. My dad recommended me to subscribe to you. Oh, I'm very sorry. I'm not better looking. But if you're looking to try to figure out how to have a better financial future, that is my goal. I invested in small multifamily real estate in a kind of high cost of living area, but not in an insane place like LA County or King County, where Seattle and LA are, or San Francisco. And it isn't something that happens overnight. It is something that happens over decade. So if you're willing to put in a few years, this is definitely something that can change your future. Felix, I love referencing that the fair market value site now went looking at deals. Yeah, me too. It helps. And then you have to know your market. Sometimes rents are above what Section 8 will pay, and sometimes it's below. Elena, $130 plus tip massage. Wow, I want to go there. I'd get daily. Yeah, no, it's $9. So if you get just a massage, it's $6. But I like the coconut oil because it keeps the mosquitoes off you. So it's $9 for the coconut oil. But then you tip like, $3. So you're tipping 30% tip. Super happy. Josh, you should look at Cook's Island. Amazingly friendly South Pacific coral reefs, and hardly any Americans go there. Most of the Kiwis and Aussies been twice. I'll have to check it out. The Australians that we met in Thailand were really nice. So there was a couple that was actually on their honeymoon. 7% increase in rents. I'll just do it. The tenants, because they're not going to catch up with market rents, because when landlords have a tenant turnover now, it goes up massively. But the 7% increase is making me a ton of money. Oliver's and Jill, howdy. When you renovate your rentals, do you swap out all the interior doors to single panel or something specific? And what do you usually do for countertops, granite quartz, or nah? So I've only swapped out interior doors if they are completely jacked up. I usually don't mess with the frame. I will take the door itself. In my area, I found there's a place called Olympic Door and Trim. There might be a different place in your area. They tend to be all over the place. They just make them to the size that I need, and I take it and put it back in. And I don't do single panel. I do whatever they have available on sale, or it's got the 4 squares, but they're hollow core for interior, solid core for exterior. I'll replace the jamb if I have to, usually because it's been kicked through too many times or something. I don't think I've ever dealt with that. I've replaced jambs on a place that's one burr here. That's why I have memory of replacing jambs. But for countertops, I have never replaced any in my rentals until I did the burr here. I'll sand and paint. I'll sand and laminate. But here I put in, and this is what I'm going to do in the future going forward, is butcher block. Just go buy the boards at Lowe's or Home Depot for butcher block. And I did a food grade polyurethane, sand it down, seal it. I've had 0 issues. If you ever really mess it up, sand it down, seal it. Like it's a fraction of the cost of granite or anything. Looks great. When you cut out the sink, I take that cut out and then sand it down and food grade polyurethane it and make it a cutting board. Leave it for the tenants. Have a nice little Dion talk with, if you scratch these or cut these, you're replacing them. And but I've made you a cutting board for you to use and leave it there for them. And then I use drop-in sinks, not undermounts, so that my cuts can be ugly because I'm not good at it. And I would probably have a contractor do it if I wanted it to look great, but they're super simple, and I've only done it twice. Chesley used to work at a cabinet factory, so she actually showed me how easy that stuff is to do. It's kindergarten simple. Josh from REI, from Martin Properties, came up here and actually helped me with them on the one. So butcher block for countertops, sand and replace cabinets. I have replaced cabinets when I had to on this burr, but all my other ones, it's been sand and paint. Yeah. We can make it as complex or as simple as we want to. Marlon, I'm in Denver, so much problem for me. Brett, hit me up. I'd love to talk. Not that I have a solution for you. Just lower the hell out of rents. Or look outside of Denver. Biden. The rents are already low. If I rented them at current rates, I'm still underwater. Yeah, I'd be looking at outside of that market. There you go. Yeah, 2025 is going to be a challenge for a few years. The 2021 and 2022, they should be doing all right, as long as you didn't tap equity. Mr. Dion, my market almost never puts multifamily for sale. I focus on single-family house. Would you consider purchasing single-family portfolio from an investor if you were in my position? Do they cash flow? What is the yield like? My first criteria is as similar to a single-family house as possible. So if I could find a cash flowing, positive cash flow single-family house, I would go for that. They just don't exist in my market. So I would absolutely, your market might be totally different. They might be the better asset class to go for. When you say multifamily never go for sale, how are you looking? Because they don't usually show up on Zillow, Realtor, any of those. They're on the MLS and they're under contract sometimes within hours. So got to have several searches going. And if you have several searches going and they're not showing up, then you're right. But if people are searching Zillow and Realtor and Redfin and they're saying they're not there, they're not seeing what's actually going on sale on the MLS. Yes, every time I go to Vegas, I seem to get the plague. So it's awesome. Marlin, bought in 2016, so I have some wiggle room. I also made a single into 2 to make more sweet. Yep, it just takes time. Coming in late tonight, got to catch up on later. William, there you go. Be done. Yeah, if you bought in 2016, you're doing a lot better. Southern Utah is a great off-road area. Follow Matt's off-road to see off-road recovery in Southern Utah. It's a gorgeous area. There you go. Marlon, are you house hacked? That can make a difference, maybe not enough in your situation. So that can help in the high cost of living area. And I think we are all caught up on questions here. Hey, Dion, the first time here on your live, I'm a big fan of your channel, but this is Rudy from El Monte, California. Do you ever come to Southern California? I told my mom if she wanted me at her funeral, she was going to have to come to Washington and die. And she didn't. So I didn't go to her funeral. Went and saw her before she passed, though. Funerals are for the living, and I don't care about most of them. But no, I will go to Southern California rarely. I went there and saw Frank and Cynthia last year. I have a brother. I have several siblings that still live in Southern California. One or two that I still talk to. No, not in my brother is there now. My brother David that lives here in Washington, he travels there often. He drove to Vegas to hang out for a little bit, but he has rentals in Kern County out in Rosemont by Edwards Air Force Base, and he is there right now. So he goes to Southern California often, but not me, unless I have to. I hope everybody has a week full of amazing. And if you watch this in Futureland, let me know. I have an interview coming up with Jason Hartman for his channel where I'm going to cover these things that happen before cash flow. What did